5 o'clock somewhere, especially in Bluffton. This is the January 16th Town Council meeting, which is a joint Town Council meeting from the past Tuesday, along with the workshop that was scheduled today. So I'm going to call this council to order, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance and the invocation, which is to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. A prayer. For those of you who pray, please join in with me. Dear Lord, thank you. Thanks for that. Thank you. Thank you for this council. Thanks. Thank you for the people in this town who love and breathe and live for this town. Please bless everyone. Please bless all of you who took the time to come out tonight. And please, dear Lord, make this a regular occurrence. Please bring these children back to this council. Please give this council strength to make this a place that's welcoming to young and old. Thank you, dear Lord, for the civility that this council has brought to this form of government. Thank you. Just thank you for the place we call home. In this we pray, amen.
Amen.
Amen. Heck yeah. We have my last duty, and I'm going to call Judge Bush up for the swearing in. But before I do, I'm serious. I love seeing people in this audience. I love seeing the young people back, and I know they're here to see probably Granddaddy and their aunts and uncles get sworn in. But please do this. This is important for our town to be present. And you have a fabulous mayor, and you have an amazing council in Bridget, Winifred, and Dan. Our staff is terrific. Our town attorney keeps things straight, but it really all falls on y'all. And I know you all, and I don't see you often here, so I will be sitting back there with you to make sure you attend. So, Judge Bush, it's been a pleasure, and I'm going to hand it over to you, my friend.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Yep. Y'all want to come on up? Family? Friends? I don't care.
The whole town.
Whoever loves you.
I'm going to domestic. You say your name and then take it. Who you want to
Here's Larry and Martin. There's more. Everybody's here.
I will now administer the oath for Bluffton. As the new town mayor, you will repeat after me. I,
Larry Toomer,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I am duly qualified,
that I am duly qualified,
according to the Constitution of this state,
according to the Constitution of this state,
to exercise the duties of the office
to exercise the duties of the office
to which I have been elected,
to which I've been elected,
and that I will,
and that I will,
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
discharge the duties thereof,
discharge the duties thereof,
and preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution
the Constitution
of this state
of this state
and of the United States.
and of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
As mayor of the town of Bluffton,
As mayor of the town of Bluffton,
I will equally, fairly, and impartially,
to the best of my ability
and skill,
exercise the trust
reposed in me, and I will use my best endeavors to preserve the peace and carry into effect, according to the law, the purposes for which I have been elected.
So help me God.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Alright, can I get a group photo?
Got big enough limbs?
I do. Okay, are you ready? Small, big. I got it. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a sad moment. I think we ought to give her a big round of applause.
I will now administer the oath for the town of Bluffton, Bluffton Town Council. Okay? I
Bridget Frazier,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I am duly qualified,
that I am duly qualified,
according to the Constitution of this state,
according to the Constitution of this state,
to exercise the duties of the office
to exercise the duties of the office
to which I have been elected,
to which I have been elected,
and that I will, to the best of my ability,
best of my ability,
discharge the duties thereof,
discharge the duties thereof,
and preserve,
and preserve,
protect,
and
defend
defend
the Constitution of this state
the Constitution of this state
and of the United States.
and of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
As council member of the town of Bluffton,
As council member of the town of Bluffton,
I will equally,
fairly,
and impartially,
and impartially,
to the best of my ability
to the best of my ability
and skill,
and skill,
exercise the trust
exercise the trust
reposed in me,
reposed in me,
and I will use
and I will use
my best endeavors
my best endeavors
to preserve
to preserve
peace
the peace
and carry into effect,
and carry into effect,
according to the law,
according to the law,
the purposes for which I have been elected.
the purposes to which I have been elected.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Prairie, are ready?
Ready?
All right. I got it. Thank you.
I think I'm gonna need some friends
hands up here if I have to. Bridget and Larry took them all.
John, come on up here. Emily, Ashley, come on up here. Joni, come on up here. Thank you, Tina. Thank you, Ann. Thank you, dear. Right hand or left hand?
You want her to put your hand right on that? I'm gonna make sure these little people get it. I'm gonna just go some Bluffton. I'll say aye. Put full name and go into it. Okay?
Yes, sir.
All right. I'm now going to administer the oath for Bluffton Town Council. I
I, Daniel Oliver Wood,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I am duly
that
qualified,
I am duly qualified,
according to the Constitution
according to the Constitution
of this state,
of this state,
to exercise the duties
to exercise the duties
of the office to which I have been elected,
of the office for which I have been elected,
and that I will,
and that I will,
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
discharge the duties thereof,
discharge the duties thereof,
and preserve,
protect,
protect, and defend
defend
the Constitution
the Constitution
of this state
of this state
and of the United States.
and of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
As council member of the town of Bluffton,
As council member of the town of Bluffton,
I will equally, fairly,
fairly,
and
impartially,
to the best of my ability
to the best of my ability
and skill,
skill,
exercise the trust
exercise the trust
reposed in me,
reposed in me,
and I will use
and I will use
my best endeavors
my best endeavors
to preserve the peace
to preserve the peace
and carry into effect,
according to the laws,
the purposes for which I have been elected.
the purpose for which I have been elected.
So help me God.
So help me God. Thank you, sir.
You're not getting a picture? Sorry. You're losing your family. Oh, you're gonna stay there.
Ready? Thank you. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, everybody, since we got that fun part going, let's get down to the business here. First thing on the agenda is adoption of the agenda. Stephen, has there been any changes?
We need to do the appointment of the mayor pro tem first, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped that. Not perfect. Okay. We have a motion for mayor pro tem. A nomination for mayor pro tem.
I make a motion to nominate Councilman Dan Wood for Mayor Pro Tem.
Are there any other? No other? Is there a vote? All those in favor?
Nominations are closed, and then you can go ahead and vote.
Nominations closed.
Then go ahead and vote. All those in favor?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's unanimous. Congratulations. Now we go to the adoption of the agenda. Has there been any changes?
No, sir, no changes to the agenda.
Okay, is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That's unanimous. Next is the adoption of the minutes from December 12th, 23.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now it's time for presentations, celebrations, and recognitions. First thing on the agenda is the Beaufort County School District Character Student of the Month. Is she here? Monica? Monica, what's the last name?
Yeah.
Monica Bautista. Guess she's not here, so this is something that we've been doing. Mayor Salko started this long before my time, I think, where we recognize one of the students from our local schools every month. And I actually had a plan to kind of outdo her a little bit with this student by telling them that if they tell Marcia what kind of food, what their favorite food is, I'd come to lunch, buy their lunch and go have lunch with them one day. But she's not here, so we'll have to contact her, and that offer will still stand. Something a little different. Okay, Martin Luther King proclamation. Did you give me that? You have it?
I would like to relay my presence and absence of my committee, and I see a former president here, Ms. Cook. Would you like to receive it?
It's yours for everything, man.
They can hear. We have mics up there. Project, and we'll be good.
All right, this is the Town of Bluffton Martin Luther King Proclamation 2024. This is my cousin. Whereas January 15th, 1929 was the birthday of a great American, the late Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who gave his life for love, peace, justice, and whereas the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. celebration is sponsored and hosted annually by the Bluffton Martin Luther King Jr. Observance Committee, and whereas the town of Bluffton is committed to pursuing the ideas of justice, love, and peace, and in Bluffton's 40th celebration, the theme shall be Transforming the Dream. Now, therefore, I, Mayor of Town of Bluffton, along with Bluffton Town Council, do hereby designate and proclaim Monday, January 15th, 2024, as Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day in the town of Bluffton. Witness hereof I have here to set my hand and cause the seal of the town of Bluffton to be affixed to this 16th day of January 2024.
Thank you.
Moving on. Next on the agenda is presentation of the utility tax credit award from Palmetto Electric Cooperative. Ms. Ashley Feaster, Community Affairs and Economic.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council. It's always a pleasure to come to my hometown and present money. Palmetto Electric is always supportive of economic development and efforts throughout the region that we serve. The state legislature in 2006 put together what was called the Rural Development Act. And within that, it allowed utilities like cooperatives, communications utilities to leverage its tax liability. Originally up to $400,000 of its tax liability to put towards qualified economic development projects in its territory or throughout the state. In 2022, thankfully, to our state legislators' efforts, that was raised up to $600,000. So last year was the first year we were able to start contributing $600,000. This year we were able to do the same. I'm excited to let you all know that you all provided us information on a project you have going on that's been continuous, but every year it changes and is getting bigger and better. And the Buckwalter MCIP, Multi-County Industrial Park, has been a huge reflection of Palmetto Electric's spirit for community. We are excited with the new plans to bring in a landing pad at the NCIP and want to support that. Palmetto Electric is going to be contributing $200,000 in 2023 utility tax credits to that effort. I know I'm also working with staff to try and leverage and try and find some grant funds within the cooperative network. So we hope to be able to come back to you all with even more news, good news. But with that said, we're excited to give $200,000 to the town of Bluffton and excited for the prospects of what's to come here in the next 2 years.
Help for everything. Appreciate it.
Okay, next we'll have Mr. Charlie Wetmore giving us an update on the Beaufort County Penny Tax Advisory Committee.
Good evening. Can I pass this in? Council members, Mayor. As you all know, we had a committee that was 6 members. The county council wanted to look at a possible upcoming sales tax referendum. And you all, I don't know if I want to say graciously or to be mean to me, appointed me to that. It was a committee that consisted of 6 members, 3 from unincorporated Beaufort County, 1 from Beaufort and Port Royal, which was our chairman, Dean Moss, 1 from Bluffton, which was me, the vice chairman, and Tom Lennox from Hilton Head. We were tasked by county council to look at the possibility of up to 3 individual taxes of up to a penny each. 1 for education, 1 for capital improvements, 1 for transportation. We met over a series of, I believe it was 12 weeks, the exact numbers in the handout I gave you, for about 2 to 2.5 hours each week. We wrestled through the needs for the county and for the individual municipalities, and what you hold in your hand is what we recommended to county council and handed over to county council in December. I believe it was on December 11th. Before I get into the meat of it, just so you know the timing, county council is wrestling through this right now. Their first meeting will be at county council. First reading will be on January 22nd. If it moves forward the way it's anticipated, the second reading will be on February 12th. The third reading will be on February 26th. I have every intent of, if I cannot attend, I plan on attending those council meetings, but if I cannot, I will debrief with Jared Fralix after each one, let you know if there are any substantial changes to what we recommended versus what county council appears to be passing. Now on to the meat of it. Y'all know, I mean, as somebody who first moved to Bluffton in '94, we've had many transportation tax referendums. And it has done things like widen 278 and 170 and built Bella Bluffton Parkway. It has been coupled with state money. And as you know, state DOT does not free up money unless there's a local match towards that. And this is designed to help get that local match towards that. We wrestled with the 3 potential taxes, and as a committee, did not feel comfortable recommending anything other than the transportation tax to county council to put up for referendum to the voters. We felt it was that important. And you'll read in the notes in here that Dean Moss did. We feel that we're behind the 8 ball. We're not trying to keep up anymore. We are behind on what needs to be done for the population that has and is moving here and the population that goes through the county. One of the things before I get into the specifics is that we wrestled with is somewhere between 4 and 5 out of every 10 pennies collected is spent by a tourist. So 40 to 50% of the money that will come into this, if it's passed by the voters, will be coming from tourists who are using the very roads that we're having to widen partially because of that. So our opinion as a committee, that was a fair and equitable way to help the people who are using the roads, not just the locals, pay for the roads and the infrastructure. So on point 2 on page 1 just went through basically what I was saying. If you would, turn to page 2. It talks about the committee process. It talks about who the members were. 5 of the 6 members were members of the committee that they had appointed the previous year to look into it, and we ended up delaying it by a year because we didn't feel it was the time for the voters to look at it. On page 3, we get into the concepts behind the recommendation. So we had 2 basic needs in this county. We have big projects. So for example, on 170 from 278 up to 462 heading towards Beaufort is a traffic nightmare right now. There are other issues where there are traffic flow issues. The big projects are to address those type of items. Then there are project programs where we deal with more generalized areas, such as mass transit, such as pathways, where it may not identify exactly where it's going to go, but that's a bucket of money to go towards that issue and that need. So the proposal we came up with, I have a hard time saying this, but I believe in it 100%, and the committee does, is a penny sales tax for 15 years or sooner if it's collected sooner, but no longer than 15 years, that will raise an estimated $1.65 billion to address these needs. We're not talking the 4-year taxes that we talked about in the past, because what we would do is we would raise the money and the projects wouldn't be done by the time we were coming back to say, we need to continue this. So I encourage you to look at what I'm about to say in depth. If you've got any questions or comments that you want me to carry on, let's have individual conversations, and I'm more than happy to do that. So if you go on to page 4, it starts talking about what I just said about the $1.65 billion, but it talks about the big projects. So on the big projects and amounts, there are 9 different categories. Category 1, 3, 5, 8, and 9 all directly affect either Bluffton or adjacent to Bluffton. Number 1 deals with the triangle, which that is what I was just talking about, 170 from 278 on north. A lot of people that work in Bluffton commute from that area, and they get stacked up in there. So we're recommending $100 million towards capacity and safety improvements and redesigning that road so that it can handle the traffic. Number 2 is a north of the Broad project for Rebo Road improvements for $75 million. Number 3, Highway 46 improvements. This is from the traffic circle out to the county line. Now, I know hopefully one of your concerns is what we had last year as well, and that is a state designated historic road. Will we lose that designation if it becomes 4 lanes? That has been researched, and it will not lose that designation if it becomes 4 lanes. The state has confirmed that, and that is in what we wrote up, and you can even see the last sentence in section 3 designates the planned improvements would be designed so as to preserve South Carolina's scenic byway designation. Number 4, Ladies Island Corridor improvements. Those are improvements that were passed in a previous referendum, but money ran out. So that's to finish those projects. Number 5, there are a number of projects, and actually number 5, number 6, number 7 are all the same thing. So one is Hilton Head 60 million, one is north of Broad 60 million, one is Bluffton 60 million. The thought process of the committee is the local communities know most what is needed in their local communities. So we wanted to have these monies triggered by the local entities. Hilton Head Town Council, Bluffton Town Council, and then Port Royal Beaufort in north of the Broad, and work in conjunction with the county to get the projects that are most needed, okay? The county doesn't necessarily know what it is, they suspect, but the people that live and work here with county staff, they believe, truly, as we approach county council, they want the input in the direction from the local entities. So that 60 million, when we started, was 0. So we were able to get that there. Number 8 is Highway 278 project enhancements. That's another $60 million, basically along the main corridor through Bluffton. Okay, and as it approaches 278. And then future projects, we know there are going to be cost overruns. Maybe the state can't match as much as we hope or give as much as we hope. Interest rate and cost goes up, so there's a bucket there for future money so that the county and the towns aren't coming back to people asking for more. That's the first part, the big project programs. The second part, the big projects. The second part is project programs and amounts, and just to hit it quickly, $100 million for mass transit. We've got to figure out the way to move people around here. That is for planning and possible implementation of certain solutions. Safety and traffic flow, $250 million. Pedestrian access, programmed stoplights are in this category, and I believe one other. As they get smarter on how to do signalized intersections and the computer controls, it's going to be easier for traffic flow, but that does cost money. Emergency evacuation and resiliency. A number of parts of the county, when it rains significantly, are underwater, such as our neighbor in Alljoy. This will help address issues on roadways to be able to keep them above the floodplain when we have heavy rains or we have issues. And there are significant issues in northern Beaufort County with this issue as well. Pavement resurfacing and preservation, it's only a scratch on the surface at $180 million. $180 million for pathways. We all see what's happened as we've planned pathways in Bluffton. People are out on them all the time. This is for additional pathways throughout the county and throughout Bluffton. There's a second one dealing with transportation technology of $90 million. And then, of course, what we've always done, and it's termed here, and this is because the state requires it to be termed green belts, but green space of $85 million in this. The rest of the document deals with our recommendation on how to implement it, which the county council may or may not take. We recommended a committee that works with the different entities that makes the recommendations back to the county, who has the ultimate decision-making power in this process. And the 6 committee members agreed 100% on this plan. And we put, you appointed us. We get paid a big fat zero and we drive a long way to be in these meetings. We've invested 25, 30 hours of our lives just in the meetings, along with the prep and after work. And I think we came out with a real good product. The county's going to look towards the municipalities as to whether they think it's a good product or not as well. As you all know, I know a number of you have been here for previous ones. If there isn't buy-in from the whole county, the county probably won't do it, because it's got to be something that appeals to the voters, and the voters make the ultimate decision. I told you the timing of the county dealing with it. The timing of the referendum that we recommended was to put it on the 2024 general election. It would start January of 25. We currently have a 7% sales tax with the current green space tax that is going to hit its $100 million goal early. So we will probably middle of next year drop from 7% to 6% in Beaufort County. All this is doing is saying, let's put it back up to the 7% we're used to and use that money to fix the infrastructure that we need to fix. Okay. Any questions, comments?
I have a few. Definitely great to see that the committee has made progress and that you all are identifying the needs here, because transportation and mobility is definitely a growing problem here. One concern that I would like to have addressed with the committee, or I don't know if you've already discussed it, but to become a referendum item, we're going to have to get the voters buy-in with that. My concern is to look at what a current maintenance plan for these proposed projects would be. Right now, there are issues with county roads in Bluffton, like the Parkway, where there are potholes and other things. So when we talk about safety for citizens driving on those roads, it's going to be hard to kind of convince them, as we were wanting to do a tax increase, if we can't address how we are currently maintaining the roads we have without talking about expanding and adding additional ones. So I would definitely encourage that to happen. Also, in looking at the mass transit project you mentioned here, one consideration too to think of is, as we have Palmetto Breeze and other transits in the area, it would be nice to consider, you know, an immediate reprieve would be looking at commuter lots. Like, we have them, you know, in operation, but currently if someone wanted to take advantage of that, there is no way to park their car and you know, use that as an option. So, as, you know, this comes to full scale, just some things to take into consideration to make it easier, for residents to be able to access.
Thank you. To maybe ease your mind a little bit, it's my understanding that the Bluffton Parkway pothole issues are actually a warranty issue that are going to be taken care of. But that is a big part of the maintenance that's in here. And I mean, let's be realistic. This 15-year plan, probably as it's winding down, will end up being another plan just to make sure that it's taken care of. Because the alternative is to increase our property taxes and increase taxes elsewhere. But yes, we did talk about maintenance, and I'll bring that back again to Jared Felix and talk to him about it from the county. The mass transit, we did discuss commuter lots and the importance of that. We also discussed, you know, we have 2 routes in Bluffton that they're not used that much, but they're used more than they used to. And how do we get people to use that more often? How do we get somebody to hop on it at Buckwalter and come to Old Town instead of driving to Old Town and parking? You know, so yeah, I'll bring both of those back, definitely.
Thank you.
Thanks, Charlie, for your presentation. I think you guys have a lot of areas that you find to be important for us as a county, but there's a lot of questions, or a lot of I guess you can't put it all in this document. And maybe we have to have you come back when we can ask questions about what does it mean to improve Highway 46? What improvement should we expect to see? In this document, it can't say that. It's kind of generic. And as well as, how would you use kind of reserve money that you say is $175 million? It's kind of like just contingency money, but it has no true definition or destination. Voters wouldn't be in favor of saying, we're going to raise that money and don't know how it's going to be spent.
I think a meeting with you, me and Jared might help if you're open to that.
Yes, sir.
There are some specifics in there, and you're right, it is hard to put it into this document. And part of it is, it would just be too much verbiage, but part of it is, it's not fully designed yet, because the money wasn't there to even start designing it till last year, designing some of these projects. The part of the challenge of a 15-year plan is, we know costs are going to go up, but we don't know by how much or when. And so that's that buffer. That may end up being costs like, I mean, we've had 2 different projects. The last one, Ladies Island, fell short by 30 to 40 million. And one back in 2006, there was a project here in Bluffton that didn't get done because they ran out of money. So that was the thought process of the committee. Whether it holds up to council or to the voters, I don't know. But they're very valid points, but I'd love to set up a meeting if you want to.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Charlie, I think I know the answer to this, but for everyone else, how are these different projects prioritized as far as what's going to get done in the first 2 years, what's going to get done, you know, I know you can't say for sure, but, you know, somebody's going to be 15 years out starting a project, you know, if the way I'm
Well,
saying.
hopefully all the projects will actually be started within 6 to 8 years. The average project does take about 7 years to start, from conceptual to actual turning the dirt. And that scares me because some of this stuff needs to be done yesterday. But the prioritization is tied into the LATS plan. It's y'all's goals with the whole region on what needs to be done. And then it steps back to within the individual municipalities or areas is you guys have a lot of weight on what gets done here, okay? Because you go home and your neighbors are gonna be asking you, what the heck's going on, you know? So we discussed that at length. I don't know if that answered your question or.
Not really, but somewhat.
Mayor,
My-
when you're through, I'm sorry.
My next question is, has there been any planning or talking about, if this penny is approved by the voters, we can say what we want, but that doesn't do anything. The people have to vote on it and approve to pay it. As far as bonding that penny, and doing these projects within, a short period of time instead of waiting 8 and 10 years from now where the cost of doing the same thing is double, then you're gonna need double the money, and you know what I'm saying? That's what we're trying to accomplish sometimes here, to go ahead and get stuff done instead of waiting until the price of the project doubles 5 years, 6 years down the road.
Well, our recommendation was to bond everything immediately. And county staff's desire is for the same thing, is to bond it right away and get going. The 6 to 8 years is from starting design to starting construction. And sometimes it takes 2, sometimes it takes 10. It all depends on the scope and the size of the project. It's a major concern. It's a major concern because between last year and this year, costs have gone up. Right now, look at everything out there.
That depends on the county council, right?
Yeah, the county council, when they approve the referendum, it will say that it needs to be bonded immediately if they choose to do that, and it will be part of the referendum.
But it's their ultimate decision how they manage or implement the process. It's county council's call.
Yep, and it always has been. It always has been. And keep in mind too that this money that we're talking about is not the money that it will cost to do these projects. It's a portion of that money. And there is the anticipation that we'll be able to do what we've done in the past, where we go to DOT and DOT funds projects based on seed money coming into it. If there's no seed money coming into it, that's a lower priority project for the state. And so we've gotten a lot of money in this county from the state to do projects like the bridge that's about to get started on the way to Hilton Head. That was, I believe, don't hold me to this, but it was somewhere around 80 million that came from Beaufort County voters in the sales tax referendum, but it's a $250 million project and the rest is coming from the state. So that's what we're counting on for this too.
Dan?
Yes, sir. I would highly encourage everybody in the audience tonight to really study this and pay great attention to it. If you imagine where we are today and you imagine where we will be if we don't do anything, you need to consider that. So again, I would highly request that you pay attention to this because everybody's quality of life is impacted. The only other comment I would make, because again, I know this is technical stuff and it takes a long time to get through everything. That's not like Fred asked, that you can't put everything in here. I would like to think y'all had discussions about low-hanging fruit. For example, the synchronization of the signalization and the access management. You know, that's low-hanging fruit. I'm assuming that those would be some of the first things tackled.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
We've had those conversations, and I will say, to piggyback on what you just said, Councilman Wood, think about for those of us that were here in the late 90s, there was no Bluffton Parkway. 170 was 2 lanes, 278 was 4 lanes and ended it at 170. If we hadn't done the previous referendums and built these roads with the population we have here now, it would be a nightmare. And in my opinion, and in the community's opinion, we've got some work to do. County Council has work to do, and they have work to do with y'all. But this is the path to keep a disaster from happening. So I appreciate your time. I appreciate you appointing me to that committee. The next one that needs a 12-week commitment, feel free to appoint somebody else.
I was gonna take the time to tell you, thank you, Charlie. I know how much time you put on this, and it's a hard, I mean, anytime you're trying to get people to agree with you about paying more taxes, that's an uphill battle right there, you know, none of us want to. But also, for everyone else to know, the county is gonna do this anyway. So Charlie has been representing the town of Bluffton, trying to make sure that when this penny referendum does come out, whether it's approved or not, that at least we get something back from our money and all the money that we pay in, and we won't get, you know, we won't just get a new bridge going to Hilton Head. Maybe we'll get some new roads coming in here and some improvements to our infrastructure as well. So I just want to say thank you very much, and you've done an excellent job representing us as far as I'm concerned.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, next we have the Bluffton Annual Development Agreement update. Ms. Heather Collin, Assistant Town Manager.
Good evening. Hi. So I'm here to just present to you the annual development agreement update. There's no action needed on this item. This is something we do annually. I do have hard copies because there's a lot of information in this packet. It's small. If you don't have a device or looked at it online, I do have some hard copies. I can certainly get more if needed. So development agreements, an A-. I don't know if you see an A-, you may think, if you're really tough, you may think I could have done better, or, you know, great job, way to go, but that equates to something in your head. When I think about an A-, you can go ahead and convert that to math, and it would be 92%. Well, 92% is the amount of land that the town of Bluffton has encumbered in a development agreement or a zoned PUD. So that's an easy way to remember it. A-, not a good or bad, it simply equates to a number, so 92%. So that's a lot of land. This map here shows what area is zoned PUD or has a development agreement. It's everything in that light green. There's more maps in the packet and online as far as all those different development agreements, but this kind of just gives you a visual to show you all of the land that is bound by a development agreement. And there's 7 of them, and they're all a little different. So I wanted to address some of the questions that we've received lately as far as what exactly is a development agreement. Well, it's basically a planning tool that is legally binding, almost like a contract or an agreement between the local government, town of Bluffton in this case, and the property owners for large development tracts. It's essentially, like I said, that planning tool to manage growth and development. At the time, you know, I describe this as, you may see, you know, curb cuts to nowhere along our parkways. You may see dead-end internal streets in some of our commercial areas and developments. Well, those are planned to later connect to additional development or adjacent areas. So they will, at some point, go somewhere. So the town and the developers at the time have already envisioned that. Whether or not, you know, some people's subjective, good, bad, indifferent, but that was all planned for and approved by council years ago. Again, it establishes clear expectations. So we have in one of the pages in your packet, there's a list that states what the maximum residential units are. Commercial space, sometimes it's measured in acreage or it's measured in square feet. But all of that is determined, and that is a part of that approved development agreement. It also goes ahead and lists out the public dedications of right-of-ways, roads. So where are those future roads going to be, whether it's the dedication of an easement for that road to be built in the future, whether it's for parks. We have Oscar Fraser Park, that was part of the development agreement for Schultz Tract, whether it's a public dock in Palmetto Bluff. So all of that is determined and negotiated at time of the development agreement was approved. And it also locks in the land development regulations at the time. So many of the earlier development agreements fall under land development regulations that we refer to as the ZDSO, or the Zoning Development Standards Ordinance, that was in effect with Beaufort County at the time. So those are essentially the rules that are locked in. As you know, some of the rules do change and can apply as they change. That's stormwater regulations and trees, because that's a town-wide regulation. It's the same regulation no matter where you're located or what your zoning district is. So another question that we're asked on a regular basis is, can they be changed? Well, now that we see what's happening, can you change it? Can we revisit that? Well, it depends. Yes, they can change. However, it's if certain things take place. The modifications are requested by the developer to the town. So for instance, if the developer has the most recent modification was in Palmetto Bluff. So Palmetto Bluff came before town council and submitted that request. All parties do have to agree. So that we've had requests come before town council to modify a development agreement, and then they've been withdrawn. The modifications are considered by town council, and that is done via ordinance. So it goes through the public process again, goes to planning commission, goes through that entire, not planning commission necessarily, but that public review to move through the process, and all that depends. So they can change, but if they meet certain criteria. This here is a map that shows all of the different development agreements and where they are in terms of build out. So the percentage. Now, some things do get a little bit confusing, and so if anyone has questions, please call town staff. We're happy to help. But build out can mean different things. It can mean the subdivision of a lot. Once you've subdivided that lot, it's considered utilized, so you can build that house, or it's the construction. So you may not always visually see that build out, but that project or application has been approved, and so essentially that's moving forward. So if you go ahead and average it all up, we are about at 77% residential build out. And again, that's platted lot. So that's not necessarily the physical home is there and occupied, but there's a subdivided plat, a legal lot that you could purchase and build a house, or there's an actual house there. We refer to all of the rest as non-residential build out because that could be civic space, that could be institutional, that could be office, that could be commercial. And in different development agreements, it could be, hotels and things like that. So that's where we still have a lot remaining development that's still to be utilized, but we're at approximately 36%. Total build out, we're a little bit over halfway there. So, and again, this map just shows the different percentages for all those different development agreements move through. And like I said, when you add it all up, you're at 92%. This, I don't expect anyone to read from the screen, but we also keep track of what all the different planned communities have. So all of the different planned communities, the residential areas, how many units are expected? Because it all does have an impact on the community and an impact on roads, as Mr. Wetmore just spoke about, and things like that. So this is on our website. It is titled a Planned Communities Map. It's under our map galleries, and we do keep this updated as well. So this is just another tool that we have to keep track of what residential is there. That's a brief overview. Like I said, as you all know who've heard this before, there's lots of numbers and information in the packet, but we do keep track of that. We always want to know where we're at because we need to envision how far are we along with those development agreements. And as time goes on, they're getting closer to expiration. And so we're continuing to work with legal as far as what exactly that means moving forward. But that's just a general overview, and I'm happy to answer any specific questions you may have, or.
One, thank you for that presentation, Heather. I think it's always important because we have a lot of residents who often, have questions in terms of why certain things are allowed in one area and not the next, and not knowing the difference between having a PUD or area that has a town's master plan. With this particular presentation, I know it's accessible because it's on the agenda, but is there a way to have something that has this language in a way that is easier for residents to digest, as that's a very frequent concern that many people have, so being able to go somewhere and see that and know where we are, what it means with the different development agreements, I think would be good.
Sure, I'd be happy to.
Just for the audience knowledge, development agreements, as you indicate, have a shelf life, supposedly. And I think it was during the recession of 2007, 8, or 8 and 9 that the state of South Carolina legislation was passed to extend development agreements across the state of South Carolina. They kind of froze things in place. Do you happen to remember what that period of time was for extensions?
Yes, I do. And so just to start, to go back, all the development agreements were initially approved for 10 years with our ordinance, and then they had an automatic 10-year renewal. So it wasn't even an extension. So that gave 20 years initial from when it was approved to when it would expire. The town then, I believe, at 2 different instances, I looked to your attorney to clarify this, but it totaled 9 years basically where they stopped the clock. There was initial, I believe, 7, and then they did it again for 2 more years later. So the state said any planning approvals, development approvals, they were stopped. Their clock and as their clock ticked to expire, they're on hold. So that was a total of 9 years. So essentially the development agreements are valid for 29 years from that initial approval date. And the state could do it again, but that's up to the state.
Kelly, you said we're about 55% build out, right? I think the total build out, 55% total. Do we have any way of measuring what those other 45% gonna look like?
What it's going to look like, the remaining build out, not necessarily, but what I will say, as you know, and for the public as well, is any development of a certain, if a development in a development agreement to move forward has to have an initial master plan that has to go through planning commission and town council. A lot of that remaining 45% does have one. If it does, it can move forward. But that initial master plan does have to be approved by town council at the recommendation of planning commission. Then after the initial master plan, which is higher level, more conceptual, when you get into the details of the engineering and trees and stormwater and where things are going to go, that requires a development plan. The development plan goes through planning commission. So I don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but I do know that it goes through several layers of review with public input.
So in that 45%, is there a development agreement in place or they just?
Oh, yes, and I'm sorry, I may have misunderstood.
Right.
The build out, that 45%, yes, has a development agreement. The other 8% that's not in a development agreement, we don't necessarily know what it's going to look like. That follows our, we have a hybrid of a form-based code and traditional zoning. So as long as it meets the Unified Development Ordinance, it can move forward. So I don't necessarily know what it would look like, but again, it does have layers of review, but I couldn't tell you what that number is going to be, because that's as creative as you can get with fitting your box in your plan and making the infrastructure work.
I know that's probably a tough area to measure, but at some point, I think we need to talk to the developers to find out what their intention are, at least so we can be a little bit more proactive in how we grow smarter.
And the council has also given staff and our office instructions, anytime there's a possibility of reducing residential density, if a developer wants to reopen a development agreement, wants to renegotiate something, that is one of the first things that we have consistently asked for. I recall many, many years ago, we developed the town density bank. There's nothing like it around, but it's worked, and we will continue to do that. I know staff that's one of their tools every time the question comes up.
Yeah, I have one more question. So going off of something Councilman Hamilton said, so in knowing where we are with the build out, and right now if development agreements are in place, and as long as they're compliant by the UDO, then they're able to do whatever. Are we, or have we gone in and looked at ways that our UDO currently doesn't apply currently to where we are when we talk about smart growth? i.e. like the previous or the current project that's being built out on Simmonsville?
Yes.
So like
We have, and you will see in the next couple months, staff's bringing forward UDO amendments that will address some of the concerns that we've heard through development that's taken place or been contemplated. So yes, we have looked, previously we looked at that at an annual basis. We think that staff's recommended at the last strategic planning session, that was a little bit too much. So you might be seeing those more frequently just to be able to get that in, reasonable amounts of information. So it's not information overload, so to speak. But yes, in the next couple of months, you will be seeing some of exactly that come forward.
which is, I think that's going to be our best way to handle the smart growth, is looking at some of the things that may have, gone unknown by many individuals. And I think, having a stricter look at that and making sure that people aren't coming in, developers particularly, and just building to whatever the highest height that they see there, in building to what, is respectful to the existing structure and nature here would be good.
Mayor, may I make one more?
Go ahead, sir.
I just wanted, Mr. Finger triggered this in my thinking process, and one of the things that a lot of people may not be aware of in the city limits of Bluffton, this council in the last few years has had numerous annexation requests that we've turned down, even some recently, where they want to come from the county and they're looking to upzone. And so they dangle something before us. They know we want affordable housing, so usually they use that as a carrot. But we have to weigh the cost. Are they asking for far more than we will gain as a municipality? And the answer has always been yes. So this council, I can think of 3 or 4 right off the top of my head that this council has voted unanimously to turn down to stop some of the annexation, so.
Right. And Heather, correct me if I'm wrong, but the 77% residential build out is only on that 92%.
Correct.
So we still have 8% that is not under a development agreement that could be residential or commercial or whatever.
Correct.
But for the most part, we have 23% of our RDUs, residential dwelling units, are done, so to speak, or in the process of being done as we speak. So the big part of development that we're going to see here in the next few years, and it may not be as fast as some may want or faster than some, but it's going to be commercial type businesses, development.
Right.
That's what's the big part of that 45% that's left to be done is commercial development. So just so we understand that clearly.
I don't know if I totally agree with that.
Well, it all depends. I mean, you can see each breakdown, and we say non-residential, so it's a mix of commercial and it could be all different things. And, and I will say we have, if you really wanted to drill down, we could drill down to show you exactly that for each development agreement. So it's, but yes, if you look at the non-residential build out and you just simply go by, again, a generalization, kind of an average, so to speak, actually it's more like 64% is non-single family residential that's left to be utilized in the development agreement.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can commercial also do apartments?
Sometimes.
Don't they have to have
But
an RDU?
I will say, so development agreements, you also have to have, there's also conversions in the development agreements. Most of those conversions, I believe, have already been utilized and done. So, yes, but and that's why I admit it is confusing because it's not a one size fits all. Each development agreement is different, and as far as how the development is measured and classified and defined, and then also if you can convert it, if and how you can convert it. So they're all different, but we can, we can answer specific questions about specific development agreements. So this is a generality, like an average of what you'd see, but you are correct. Mayor, that the commercial is what will follow, especially along a lot of the parkways, and that's where the commercial property typically has been designated in those master plans. So that typically comes after the beds.
So if there are development agreements that, with properties that can be converted, wouldn't that be an amendment? Wouldn't that have to come back to the
No, not
table?
necessarily.
On the development agreement and what's outlined within it.
Right.
But like Buckwalter, all of them have been converted already, so they're maxed out. So
I
there's
thought I was
more
told by you
conversion.
guys that we don't, that all of them,
And
all the
Buck-
conversions from residential to from commercial to residential have been exercised.
I'll have to double check that. I didn't come prepared with that exact, but I know in Buckwalter, the conversions are done. They're done with those conversions. Because in the development agreement, they outline what you can convert and how you can convert it. So, for example, one residential unit equates to 4 assisted living units, or, how that works. And the same with a hotel room is equivalent to 2 residential dwelling units in Buckwalter. So they're all different, and they're all very specific. I was going to bring, just so the public could see, one of our development agreement books, because when you see the binders, they're this big for the initial one. So I wish I could answer it off the cuff for certain, but I'd have to get back to you on whether or not they've all been used up.
One more.
But you're right, there are some
observation.
instances where the amendments, when they want to go beyond what's initially approved. So if you look at your chart and you look at Bluffton Village and you see they're allowed so many residential units and so much commercial, if they want to go above and beyond that, then it comes to town council for an amendment to the development agreement.
One more observation for clarity. On the 8% that does not reside within the development agreements that you referenced, that 8% already has a lot of residential units on it. So it's not a blank slate. It's already, there's room for more housing, but there's a lot of housing already exists in some of those locations. So it's not unattended 8%.
Correct.
Okay.
So if you look at the map, it's primarily our initial 1 square mile, so the historic district, some Buck Island, Simmonsville, Gotha, you can see that yellow area, some pockets of that. So yes, there's a lot of development already there.
Okay, nothing further? Thank you, Heather.
Thank you, Heather.
And like I said, if anyone has questions, I'm happy to answer, because clearly it's a big topic.
You did good, thank you. Okay, next up, we got an update and discussion related to the SCAD Pro recommendations for the Squire Pope Carriage House and Welcome Center. Mr. Glenn?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. This is a continuation of a discussion we started back in October at the last workshop. So here's the new update. Just by way of background for people who are not familiar with the project, in 2023, the town contracted with SCAD Pro down at the Savannah College of Art and Design to develop a design concept for the town's new 540 square foot welcome center to be housed at the Squire Pope Carriage House. For those of you who are not familiar with SCAD Pro, it's a collaborative design studio at the university that connects current and future art and design professionals with business leaders to find creative and innovative solutions for real-world challenges. Our SCAD Pro class started in the fall academic quarter for 2023. It went from 10 weeks starting on the 12th of September, and they finished on the 16th of November of this past year. The team, or the cohort, was made up of 17 graduate and undergraduate students from SCAD, led by one of the professors from the Preservation Design Department. They represented different expertise, from architectural history to preservation design to interior design, different focus groups. They were tasked with designing a 540 square foot welcome center within these parameters at the Squire Pope Carriage House. Everything that's delineated in the red dotted area is basically 540 square feet. For practical purposes, that's about the size of a New York Manhattan apartment. So the challenge was limited in what they could come up with in 540 square feet. I thought I'd give you some quick updates of what the current conditions look like. These photographs are already outdated. This was taken about a month ago. If you haven't been out to the site recently, it's changed dramatically. But this is an exterior view of the Squire Pope Carriage House. And then I'm giving you a couple of interior photographs showing you part of that 540 square foot empty space. When we came in front of you in October for the workshop, one of the things that we showed you was a diagram similar to this one. SCAD Pro students came up with a design element, a design scheme that represented the Welcome Center, broke it into different time periods in Bluffton's history, starting from everything from the Native American history up through the Bluffton beginnings, all the way to present day. They arranged things color-coded so that a visitor would come into the Welcome Center and be presented with the entire history of Bluffton in a visual space where they could walk through and learn everything they needed to know about the town. These are basically some of those eras that they were looking at, everything from pre-Bluffton up to the new millennium where we are right now. They also designed various elements to be included in those exhibition spaces. So they looked at graphics. So we had graphic designer students came up with a Welcome Center Town of Bluffton logo, which you'll see in the top corner of the screen. We had furniture people developing corner displays. One of the parameters we gave the students was everything that they design needs to be movable. In the 540 square foot area, we wanted to be as flexible as we possibly can be, given the space conditions. So we said, make them movable, which they did. Corner displays are on casters, can be folded up, moved around. Display boards, also movable. The display boards in particular, we have full-size mock-ups available if you so choose to see those. I can make sure that you see them. We can even take them over to the Squire Pope Carriage House, and I can show them to you in person if you so desire to see them. But we have all the display boards mocked up, and they're also in that packet that I gave you. I'm a very visual person, and here's some of the renderings that they came in. So as you're coming in the front door, the first thing you'll see is the welcome desk, which they designed, and then you'll see how the display units are arranged around the perimeter of the rooms. This is the room as you go in the front door, actually to the right. Another view of the same room shown from the other side with the staircase that goes upstairs to office space. They designed also furniture that can be permanently installed or again movable. The TV, as you see in that back area, would be actually a functioning TV that we could develop programming for, flexible based on need or information that we may want to highlight. One of the feedback options we got from y'all when we were here in October was the original concept had center display features. In the centers of the room, you thought that might be too overcrowded. Those were taken out or pushed to the sides. One of the other things that they came up with was some long-term future technological aspects, phone apps, interactive maps, things of that nature that we could, in fact, in future develop if we so choose. But those are, I include you in this slide as well. Our next steps are tonight asking for approval to implement the SCAD Pro designs. You can authorize to implement all of them, some of them, or none of them. We're also asking for allocation of funds for fiscal year 25 to start implementing these ideas with a target opening date to the public in January 2025. I blew through a lot of material in a very short period of time, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
I think it looks good, but that's just me.
Thank you.
Yes, I think you didn't take my consideration in account.
We did take some of the into account, but we can also work on more of your ideas as well.
Say it again?
We can flesh out these designs better if you have a specific issue.
All right, thank you.
Just a comment, I was in attendance virtually when they did the final or the updated presentation. It was really good. And know I'm gonna sound like I'm beating a dead horse, but my colleagues weren't present, for it, and I just wanted to convey what I said to them there and in the general audience. I'm glad to see that this, is coming to circle. It's gorgeous. Cannot wait to, see it come to life. But admonishing throughout the project and always make sure, as we have not always historically gotten it right, that historically we are accurate in the representation of everyone in telling the story from not the lens of a very, exclusionary lens, but that we tell it that's inclusive of everyone, and authentic to who we are.
And we're working very hard to make sure that that comes to fruition.
That's it for me.
I like it. It's way different than what I would have thought from the beginning, but I said that last time too, so I'm not gonna win that battle, so I'm not gonna beat a dead horse. If that's what everybody wants, I'm fine with it. You want directions from us, or?
Yes. So some direction as to,
So I'm just hitting a formal item, so we're just gonna,
just any feedback as they work to finalize things, because what we're gonna do as we get into the budget process for fiscal year 24-25 is put the funding to complete this and then get the Welcome Center operating. The goal is to have it, operating the first part of 25. So we just wanted to make sure as we start working, because we want to take these designs and we need to go and get somebody to actually, carpenter and all that, to actually put these and build them. So as we get ready to start putting funding for that, we want to just get council's input and make sure that we're going the right direction. Like Glenn said, if there's a few tweaks or comments that you have that we need to look at, we can do that as we get into the design, and we can give you another update as we start working to finalize that before we get into construction.
This does not require a vote, but I would say that I would personally, again, you have to have funding for the building, and you have to have funding to move forward, and we're going to have it operational. I think, from my perspective, proceed.
We'll bring the funding will be part of the budget request coming up, so we'll get into that as well during the budget period.
Sounds good, but you're asking me to sign a check.
Not today, not today.
Sign a blank check.
all right. Thank you very much.
thank you, Glenn. Okay, now, up next, we've got update and discussion related to a conceptual plan, master plan for Buckwalter Place Park. Pat, Capital Improvements Project Manager, Superman.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here tonight to present some planning work that we've been doing on Buckwalter Place Park, which is formerly known as Evercore Park. I'll skip through, in the interest of time, I'll skip through some of the background. You know, when you purchase the property, you know the directions that you've given to staff in the past. We engaged Thomas and Hutton, their landscape division, who did the original plan for Evercore Park, to kind of look at it and assess what worked and what didn't work, and then also achieve some of the goals and principles that we asked them to address in a conceptual master plan. And those three items really are comfort and safety, to improve kind of the conditions out there. There's not a lot of shade out there when we have public events. It needs more shade any way we can get that. Improve the kind of the open visibility of the park. Right now it's fenced in and it's got perimeter landscaping, so we want to make sure you're able to surveil the park from the perimeter. Improve lighting, restroom capacity, water fountains, overhead canopy of the trees, and shade elements. We ask them to look into improving the access and inclusion. There is perimeter sidewalks around half of the site. There needs to be additional connections to connect the pedestrian to parking areas, both to the east and the west. And then overall, kind of look at the landscape itself. There's a lot of landscaping that was planted with Evercore Park. We think we can simplify it, reduce some of the shrub mass areas, maybe add more sod, And then we do want to definitely add more shade trees to the site. This is just an aerial of the site. Again, there's a dash line at the top along Caracor Drive, along Innovation Drive. It indicates a sidewalk that's needed to kind of complete the connections around the park on the outside. Again, we talked about lack of shade, the restroom, increasing the size of the restrooms there. Some of the landscaping, because of the soils out there, some of the trees did very well, some of them did poorly, and I'll show you some of the photographs in that. So we want to address that issue and then reduce the maintenance requirements for the site. These are just some existing photographs. That amphitheater element is a nice element that we don't have in any other park here, so that's a kind of a new element. Also, just having the fence around that makes this park a good place to have ticketed events, and I think that'll be a benefit. That photograph at the top center is kind of a seating area where the intent was that those trees would create a nice shaded area for people to sit and have dinner and lunch. Unfortunately, those particular trees didn't do well, so we're looking for, in this master plan, other attempts to provide shade to that area. And you can see in the bottom two slides that those crepe myrtles did very well as opposed to those trees up in the top center. And there's an existing monument sign there that we would like to either repurpose or remove and redesign. So I'm going to go through this conceptual master plan, and all the items that are listed on the left are also, I'm going to give you a handout that has those items so that you can kind of keep tab of what I'm talking about, maybe. That what we're going to talk about later in the presentation when we get to questions and discussion. Thank you. Okay, the legend is on the left, and there's a corresponding letter in each one of those items that are on the plan itself. And I'll try to use my mouse to move around to where we're talking about. Items A, which is at the top of the sheet here, D, C, I think this is, if you look a little closer, E and M, they're all elements that are related to Caracor Drive and mostly pedestrian circulation. We believe that, the two parking lots behind the Caracor buildings are, the closest parking for events. If those are be able to utilize, then that entrance there needs to be kind of upgraded so there's more pedestrian connections there. So this is proposing expanded plaza to incorporate the two crosswalks coming across Caracor Drive, a sidewalk. Let's see, where's my mouse? Oh, okay, now there it is. This sidewalk is not here right now, but in this master plan is proposing a sidewalk connection.
You went to the second option, Pat.
Huh? Same thing. Sidewalks on both options. Expanded entry. This area between the fence and the existing parking, we were proposing to reduce some of the shrub landscaping there and convert it to a lawn area. This is an area kind of would take care of overflow for food trucks that might be parked on Caracor Drive for events. So and then these entrances need to be upgraded. There's actually no entrance coming from this northwest corner, so we're proposing to put an entrance on that side as well. Item B, this is a large circle, concrete circle right now that really doesn't have much function to it right now. We're proposing a couple options for this. One would be a curved trellis with seating underneath it and a raised planter just to break up that large expanse of concrete and add some shade. Another option we'll talk about later, which is perhaps a splash pad or interactive type fountain in that location. And these are all just suggestions at this point, and that's why I put up the handout, so you can kind of say, yeah, this is something we'd like to consider, or these are something we don't think you ought to include in the final master plan. So moving along, items, looks like it's F and G. These are a couple existing kind of half-circle pads that have existing benches in them. But this looks like a park where these half circles might be good areas to consider some public art. Now we have a public art program within the town. This whole park has a lot of possibilities to include public art. So we're showing on this particular master plan in those areas that are identified as F and G, I believe. Item F, which is down here in the corner, that is that monument sign that I talked about earlier. You know, we want to either repurpose that or redesign a different signage system for the park. Item I, this is the amphitheater, kind of that building for the amphitheater. It's kind of an open structure with storage in it. It has roll-up doors. It has a stage on the amphitheater side, and it opens up to the vent lawn area. It also includes some restrooms, which we think need to be expanded. And then you'll see some imagery later on, but we think these areas where the stage is and where the event lawn is, a retractable awning would be a good solution there to add some shade to any performances that happen there. Item J down here, this is that bosque of trees and that seating area I showed you a photograph earlier. We're proposing a couple options for this as well, as you'll see. This is basically a decorative shade sail over that whole area. Remove the trees and put a decorative shade sail over it. Item K, this is, again, another suggestion or recommendation for an outdoor kind of fitness station area. We don't need a playground, I don't believe, in this park because we have a nice one right across the street, but with the jogging trail around the site, fitness station, a couple stations in this area would be suggestions being made in this master plan. Item L on this are these arbor/swings, which is kind of a signature element that we've been placing in a lot of our parks lately. So that's another option that's being suggested in this master plan. Down here just below, item O here is a crosswalk. Right now it's a painted crosswalk. There was no crosswalk there prior to us purchasing this property, but then we added it. But we're thinking that might need to be an elevated crosswalk to kind of slow traffic down in this area because there could be a lot of traffic going across the street in that location. I think that's majority of what we're showing on this option one. Just to show you this is basically the same plan, but it has three differences. One is this circular element would be more of a interactive type fountain as opposed to the trellis and raised planter. Around these half circle nodes that are around the site, I'm using my cursor to show you where they're located. This kind of terracotta colored items are really kind of shade sails. So again, if there's seating areas at each one of those locations, we're kind of suggesting that as a possibility. And again, over the fitness station, also another shade sail might be considered in that location. Difference in the plan here is also the treatment of this seating area with just two pavilions, kind of similar to what is over beside the Hayward House, that size pavilion there where they could be rented out for birthday parties and such. And that's generally it on the master plans. I've got some imagery. We talked about with the consultant about putting these misting stations in. Again, primary in our mind is providing shade and relief from the heat. We suggested, I'm not sure these images are the best for this, we suggested possibly at some of these more main entrances putting kind of an arched item over it to kind of identify that element as these are the main entrances to the park. Public art, I discussed that earlier. This is a great location to consider public art. This is some imagery of the fitness stations and the arbor trellis and the jogging trail and the water fountain. Some imagery of, triangular shaped sails, other retractable awnings and kind of decorative sails. There's also an image of some water jets and that one on the right-hand side, spray jets that we talked about that as an option for that circular area. Couple more images. Trellises and so where we are is we're here tonight to get input on what's being proposed here in order to finalize a master plan. And then in this year's budget, we would be projecting some of those hardscape and landscape improvements. So I'm here to answer any particular questions. I know that's a lot of information. I'm sorry about that, but hopefully you have a list in front of you of items you could kind of let me know how you feel about them.
All right, Bridget?
Great presentation, Pat. I love the options and designs you have here. I would be interested in seeing what the entire plan for lighting is gonna be, because lighting out there is horrible when you're doing an event. After a certain time, it's pitch dark out there. And so I know that's a safety issue, but also from an event standpoint, to host one, you'd have to bring in like your own lighting to be able to illuminate the space. So I'd like to see what we're gonna do there. I love the designs. I think for the shade sails, it should be an option of either or between that or the misting stations, as they both kind of would do the same in providing some relief from the heat or giving shade access for people to cool down. So I would be for one or the other, not both at the same time. And I'm definitely going to be a fan of option 2. I was trying to look at Chris and he wasn't giving me his eye. So for a water feature there, I think would definitely be great, whether it's just the jets coming up or a full-on splash pad edition here would bring us up to, I think, 3 options at our park. So it's my vote or input.
Fred?
We got enough splash pads already. That's all I have.
How about interactive fountain? How's that sound?
Right, I said that, either or.
I don't want to
Interactive
get caught in the
fountain.
middle here, but I don't think we need a splash pad, but I think the water feature was really nice, so I'm agreeing with Ms. Frazier on that, not a splash pad, accommodate Fred. I like the raised crosswalk idea because you've got a park over there with kids that be going back and forth. The lighting issue is a good question. The park will close at dusk, technically, unless there's an event. So I don't know how you solve that dilemma. That's something that you have to come back with staff to kind of update us on that, because it was extremely dark out there. Regarding the pavilions, I don't know, we have to start out with the pavilions. That's just me. I don't know what the rest of this council feels, if do we need to jump on them or not. But, I'd like to hear that if there's a feeling to go forward with that. I see the sails or the trees I guess what I'm trying to say is baby steps. That's all I'm saying.
Or let's see what the cost options are. To Councilman Wood's point, let's see what the cost options are in terms of which one is, what feasibility looks like, because I'm imagining the pavilions you have here are similar to the one that we have at Du Bois and the one that's currently at Oscar Frazier, correct?
Yeah, except for those do have restrooms built into them and storage parts. This would be just an open air pavilion like what's beside the Hayward House, I would think.
So these would be additional restroom spaces to the existing ones that are already there by the amphitheater?
What we're proposing on this master plan is expand the existing restrooms in that amphitheater building.
So J is representative of what?
An open air pavilion.
No walls.
No walls, yeah.
Similar to what we're building out at,
Restroom.
And
the restrooms are in the amphitheater building. They would be, this plan calls for expanding that, because right now there's 2 single restrooms, and that they would expand that to have more restrooms in the building. But these would be just like similar to what we're putting at a new Riverside barn, just open air, pavilions with picnic tables where people could do birthday
Right,
parties
that's,
or have
it's
lunches
not,
and stuff.
this is a similar, this is a different design than some that we have at our current parks.
It's different than Du Bois
Rotary.
and Rotary because they have the restrooms built into it. If you would just remove the restrooms, it would just be the open footprint.
Right, that's what I was assuming is just the pavilion that provides that space. So yeah, so I think that would be a great option in terms of, we see the frequency of how residents use the pavilions at Du Bois as well as Oscar Frazier, whether it's a pop-up birthday party for a kid or a family picnic. I see that being utilized, definitely.
That would provide some on this side of
Right.
the community where we don't have any right
Right.
now.
I would agree. Thank you.
In terms of baby steps comment, I think what we're looking to do is develop a plan that could be implemented over time. It may not be that this is high priority to do it all at once. It may be over a 5-year period like we've done with some of the other parks, so.
And I like the,
And you don't have to implement the entire plan, but I have to be careful not to put something on a plan and not deliver it within a certain period of time.
I like the idea of having the different, smaller buildings, more of them, because lots of times you have more than one family that wants to have a little birthday party, or whatever, with 15, 20 people.
Yeah.
And it would accommodate, more people at the same time. Otherwise, I like it. Anything else? Any other questions from anybody? So we need to tell you to go ahead and spend more money, or what are you asking us for?
Right now, I'm asking you, the comments that you provided me tonight, I'll develop it into a final, well, it won't be it'll still be called a conceptual master plan, but it'll be something that we will use as a working tool to develop budgets for 25 and 26 and 27, probably in the next 3 years.
Anything from anybody else? Okay. Okay, where are we at here? That will move us into the public comments. Do we have any public comments tonight?
You do have 5.
5. Okay. All right. I'm gonna read this, every word of it. And next time, I'm probably not gonna read it. During public comment, each speaker is limited to a total of 3 minutes per meeting, regardless of whether the person is speaking on their own behalf or as an agent for others. Meeting attendees may not donate, transfer, yield, or give all or any portion of their speaking time to another person. All public comments are to be conducted from the podium and directed to the town council as a whole and not to any member thereof. All speakers shall be mindful and respectful of those participating in or present at the meeting. Speakers shall be expected to be civil in their language and shall refrain from comment or behavior that involves disorderly speech or action. Name calling, personal attacks, threats, obscene or indecent remarks, and/or disruptive actions. All speakers shall confine their comments to the issues under the jurisdiction of this council. Speakers shall not use the public comment period to promote or advertise awards, businesses, services, goods, or candidates for public office. Any speaker that violates these rules and protocols for public comment may be and will be ruled out of order by me. Any person whose comments have been ruled out of order shall immediately cease and desist from further improper comments. The refusal of an individual to desist from further improper comments may subject the individual to removal from the meeting and/or a citation under section 2-49 of the town code. First up.
Clarence Mitchell.
Mitchell.
Mike Raymond,
Was he here?
No, I never saw him.
Carolyn Smith.
Mike Raymond's not here either, right? Okay.
Good evening. My name is Carolyn Smith, and first of all, I would like to congratulate all of y'all on your new term and your new positions on the board, and hope that y'all have a successful adventure as being the mayor and council. What I've come to speak to y'all about tonight is the consideration of the resolution of establishing the improvements of the plan of roadways of Old Bluffton. I think the first one on your list is going to be Lawrence Street. And I did come in this past week and sign my right-of-way papers for Lawrence Street. And at that time, I was given these papers to study. And it says, there are no plans to change the characteristics of the roads, and that the changes will be reviewed at the request of the property owners and after public input. And I would just like to say that that is very important. Everybody else here tonight has been asking for change and improvement and to spend a lot of money. I'm going to ask you to not do anything. Leave it like it is. But the one thing I want to make sure is when you just take over these ghost roads and put the sewage in, and you have the right of way to maintain them, that they do stay like they are, and that there will be no public parking or access. I shouldn't say access, no public parking to block the people from getting down these roads to their houses, and to keep them like they are. And at any time when anything is to be done, that you do, talk to the property owners around the areas. With Lawrence Street being the first one, I see there's going to be quite a few more that's going to be worked on or have been worked on or whatever. So I would just like to say that I'm in favor of this, but I also want to see y'all do what you say you're going to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Carolyn, if you will, just state your name again and your address. I forgot to ask you to do that.
Carolyn Smith, 1 First Street.
Thank you.
Better known as Oyster Street.
Thank you. Up next.
Skip Hoagland.
Thank you very much. My name is Skip Hoagland, Windmill Harbor. Bluffton under Salka and Finger leadership became a mini banana republic to profit both their pockets. Salka, a realtor, and Finger to profit his private law firm with developer, realtor, and builder clients. Toomer and the rest of this council just took orders and were told how to vote on most issues. Toomer was basically Salka's puppet and can assure you that an oyster knows more about overdevelopment, traffic, and pollution than Toomer does. Bluffton is broken. It needs to be fixed. First, we need to elect a new honest mayor with no conflicts, no horses in the race, not controlled by Terry Finger or special interest groups. We need to try to change our political system to a full-time, full-power mayor with the rights to hire and fire, and Hilton Head is the same way. Next, replace all council members like Toomer who were told how to vote that caused the overdevelopment, the traffic, and the pollution of the May River. No one moved here for Hilton Head or a big city life, nor make our corrupt realtor mayor and town lawyer rich. Next, fire Terry Finger. 25 years of his overcharged legal fees, conflicts profiting his private law firm must end. We need to hire a staff lawyer and only use outside firms when needed. We need to FOIA and see all of Finger's legal fees and other legal fees paid by taxpayers for 25 years. I predict legal robbery. Next, terminate the entire hired Bluffton police force that is controlled by Soka, Finger, and this council. It's like a police state that took orders to even break laws, and if they didn't follow the orders, they could be fired. We need to replace the Bluffton police force with Sheriff Tanner, who is the duly elected by the people and the chief law enforcement officer of Beaufort County. He is not hired or controlled by corrupt politicians. Next, we need to terminate Bluffton's private controlled judges. They are also told how to rule on cases like mine by Finger and town officials. And worse, Judge Bush ruled against the rule of law that forces me to appeal to higher courts if you want to win. It's judicial malfeasance. I contend that all of Bluffton's budgets and audits are fraudulent. All the year-end audits only audit the numbers handed to the audit firm by town insiders. Audits under gas do not identify waste, fraud, embezzlement, crimes, and overcharged legal fees. Only a professional, independent forensic audit firm can accomplish this. Once a forensic audit firm or an FBI investigation is done on Bluffton, I predict prison will result. And God help us if we still have 45% more development to go. What do you call this? Is this progress or destruction? You decide.
Thank you, Mr. Hoagland.
You're more than welcome.
Let's move on.
Do we have the next one?
Lynn Greeley.
I'm here for Ms. Greeley, who couldn't attend, and I have a POA document that I'm happy to hand our honest lawyer. And I don't have 3 minutes. I just want to make a few comments.
I'd be happy to look at the POA to see whether it's valid or not.
I'm happy. Would you like to have the POA?
Whether it's valid or not, you do not have a right to speak for more than 3 minutes. You understand that, Mr.
Oh,
Hoagland?
I'm sorry. I'm here for Ms. Greeley and Judge Bush ruled in favor.
You have 3 minutes.
Bush ruled against the rule of law, and he is going to be held accountable for that.
You are done.
But Judge Boggs ruled. Sorry?
Out of order.
I'm talking to Terry Finger. I'm not out of order. Terry Finger's out of order. No, you're out of order.
Mr. Hoagland,
Right,
you've been called out of order by the mayor. Your public comment is over, just like every
I
month.
didn't interrupt you all. I just asked for 3 minutes.
Mr. Hoagland, we're going to ask you like we do every month. You can either have a seat or we will have the police escort you out like we've done every month.
I just handed the POA to Terry Finger.
Mr. Hoagland, this is your last warning.
I'm asking to speak for Ms. Greeley.
Will you please
She
address
just
the
called Ms.
situation? Thank
Greeley
you.
and Ms. Greeley said I could speak her 3 minutes. So if you could just show me respect. There you have it. Yeah, I'll get you. Okay. If I get the First Amendment, you'll be ashamed of yourself.
Well, here we go. How about some communications from mayor and council? Dan, you want to recess? No, I guess maybe. Fred, you got anything? Nothing to say. Thank you, Bridget.
Yeah, I just wanted to communicate what an amazing turnout we had in the town of Bluffton this whole weekend, celebrating the birthday and legacy of Dr. MLK. And a huge thank you to town staff who helped coordinate and help make a lot of those events run as efficiently as they did. And for those who came out in attendance, I believe we fed over 300 yesterday at the Unity Picnic and had just a great weekend. So thank you to everyone for that. Also, I know some of the residents were in the audience representing Maiden Lane and just wanted to communicate that we went out a few weeks ago and did hear their concerns in terms of ghost roads, and glad to know that we're going to be working with residents as when we heard to them, make sure that we do keep their concerns of not obstructing or changing their way of life on those roadways as we acquire them.
Thank you. Dan?
Red, you want to go?
Good.
It was a big weekend and started out with the loss of a good Bluftonian, Mr. Doug Corcoran. And I think the beauty of it was Doug had his eulogy at AME Church, and Dr. John Black did a fabulous job. A lot of people were talking about, it was probably, it's kind of odd to say this, it was the best funeral they'd ever been to. It was just remarkable, and the church was full to the brim. So that was started out, and then, of course, we had the gala that Bridget so tactfully did with MLK, and you had a great speaker, Miss Harris. She was just phenomenal. And then we had the mayor's retirement party, which was nice at the Rotary Center. And then we had our little tribute to MLK Day yesterday, and it was well attended. So it was a big weekend in the town of Bluffton, and I, for one, was proud to be a part of it.
Thank you, Dan. Yeah, dittos to, I didn't get to the food yesterday because I was cooking food for an event that we had going on, but the other night, you know, that was great. You did a great job, and I appreciate it. And I wish we could have done more for the mayor going out, but oh well, she's not going far. She's just moved over a seat or two. So anyway, I just wanted to say thanks for everybody that came tonight. Most of my friends and family are gone, but I do have half a dozen or so left over here for a moment. But and I just thank everybody and I ask to be patient with me because I know I'm one of those sinners and I will be making mistakes, you know, and I know I will. So just bear with me, and I'll try to correct them and get better as I grow and as long continue to learn. So, time for formal agenda items. Consideration of a resolution establishing an improvement on and maintenance plan for the roadways in Old Town. Ms. Heather Collins, Assistant Town Manager.
So yes, what you have before you is a proposed resolution that essentially establishes an improvement and maintenance plan for roadways in Old Town, the historic district primarily. So this, the map here in front of you outlines roads within the historic district as far as who, the ownership, the improvements that are on that road, whether it be lighting, sidewalks, or traffic calming with speed humps. And then also the unknown roads, or what we refer to commonly as ghost roads. So I do want to clarify that this policy is for all the streets within the historic district. And one concern is, yes, those ghost roads, that once the ownership is cleared up, what's the town's plans for it? But it does address all of the roads in the historic district. I'll go ahead and put it back to this. Also want to say that primarily the resolution that you have in your packet really just outlines what the characteristics of those roads are at this time. So that right now, council's goals and directives isn't to change the character of those streets by any means. We, as everyone knows, in the budget, we outline our capital improvement projects and moving forward. So any road improvement projects would be part of that budget process and part of that CIP list. Other than the already approved streetscape project, so the second phase of Bridge Street, and then later Calhoun Street, there are no plans by town council at this time to change the character of those streets. The resolution also aims to outline that should the residents request any improvements or changes, I should say. So for example, street calming and speed bumps, we already have a policy that outlines how the residents go about that. So it starts with an application and request, and I believe it is 75% of the owners on that street are requested to, I don't want to say sign a petition, but agree to that request, and then it moves forward to council. So again, the goal is to simply reiterate to the public that there are no plans to change the character of the streets. There's no plans at this time by this council to change the layout or widen the streets or anything of that nature. And if there are any proposed changes, that would come from the residents and would go through a public process. And then also if town council does have any future projects that, like I said, that would go through the capital improvement plan and then ultimately budget. So again, this is a map that shows what the conditions we have at this time, and then the resolution is in your packet. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Yeah, I have a question, Heather. So the resolution applies to roads that have, ghost roads that have already been acquired, or will this cover future roads to be acquired as well?
Future roads as well. And I also want to reiterate that this does not change the policy or the directive that staff has already received concerning ghost roads and the acquisition of those and how we move forward. But yes, it does apply for existing roads as well as future ghost roads that we may acquire.
And with that, with the residents of Maiden Lane and the concern that they had, is that something that we can discuss at this time? Is that something to discuss with Terry in terms of a concern about the current plan that shows a cutway through someone's yard, and that being one of their concerns of signing over the?
I would defer to council as far as how and when you'd like to discuss that. I will say that based on the resolution and how it's drafted, is that there is no intention, if there is not already a physical path, road, quote unquote, roads to speak, roadway, that there's no intentions to create one by this council at this time. But I'll defer to council if you'd like to further discuss that with legal.
Add on to that answer as well. So one of the reasons we wanted to do this is because we've heard those questions. Is they come and when we go and speak to residents, they'll say, y'all just want this so you can connect it to another road, or you want to get it so you can improve it or widen it. And when we say we have no direction to do that, and council has given us a direction to do that, we have nothing to prove that. So one of the things that we talked about is by putting this into place, when the residents say, what are your plans for, like say Maiden, we can look on here and say, council's directive as given to staff is to only maintain it as is with the current characteristics. If it's paved, if it's got sidewalks or speed bumps, if there's no, like she said, no connection that's already been made, we would make no connection. And the way this is outlined is that anytime we want to change this, is good all the way through our comp plan, we would have to come back to council for a vote to get y'all to tell us to change from that. That way the community gets involved, they get to be able to give input, and we can't go out there and make any improvement to any road in Old Town without them having a chance to come in front of council and voice their concern. So that was the main reason we wanted to do this, is so we could help quell some of those concerns that we get and the questions we get to say, show me where you don't have a plan. We can now show this as our plan for how we will not make those connections and improvements.
And thank you for that, Stephen. I think that the greater concern was that there was someone who was acting on behalf of the town doing the exact opposite previously. And so it raised a lot of concern for those residents in terms of, though we're a new council, if we are aiming to do something different, their mindset is still on the discussions of what previously was stated. And so it makes a lot of folks apprehensive. And that's why I said in what we're acquiring, the purpose is good, but there's a lot of apprehension that we have to address, and that I want to make sure that we don't ignore from residents, particularly on native streets, who do feel a sense here of apprehension that they don't want to have what they deem as a takeover or a change to their way of life. And as long as we can get some assurances through having those conversations, and even if it requires us documenting that to them just to make people trust what we're saying here, I think is going to go a long ways, because I don't want to force it through and not have the trust of the residents that we're not going to come back and do something arbitrary to them.
Dan, anything?
Yeah, this is roads. This doesn't preclude utility easements and stormwater or things like that. This is just saying we're not going to change the character of the roads that are there. It also gives us the ability to perform the maintenance that's needed, that nobody owns the road, so they benefit from, which is always one of the main purposes of this. You know, if somebody wants to do something on a road, and the only question I have is if you have 5 people saying yes and 1 saying no, I don't know what you do. So I think you have to figure that one out as we go.
And like I said, we do have a process that we can relook at as far as if there are 5 people and 1 says no, that goes through the review process with council. So we do have that in it. Again, it's similar to what, for example, when Pritchard Street requested speed bumps on their road, because that's not a ghost road. So there's the process to go through to request that there's speed bumps. And the residents requested that, moved through the process, and now there's traffic calming there, so.
You said that 75% would have to be deciding number. Is that something has always been documented, that we require 75%?
No, that's something that is in that traffic calming policy that staff adopted. I know it's in the resolution a couple of years ago and council approved. That was specifically aimed at street calming. And that's what we were going to use moving forward, just as a starting point for residents to bring forward requests. But certainly, we always take requests, and then it's at council's will whether or not to discuss how to move forward with proposed changes. So it is flexible, but it's just a guide and something to start moving forward.
I don't think I disagree with 75%, but I thought 51% would have been the better option, but I don't know. 75% sometimes it takes a lot. Again, back to Bridget's point, and Stephen, question is to you. Where do we document things that you just said? Is there something in writing that we share with the residents?
So that would be this, and if you look at the map that's shown, you'll see the kind of brown and yellow dashed areas. They're classified as historic right-of-way and inaccessible. That is their current condition, so we would maintain that current condition. So in other words, they're just historic right-of-way, they're not a built roadway. Unless we're told separately by council to amend that, we would honor it as inaccessible and just right-of-way. So that's what the goal is.
But there is pencil and paper somewhere that says that.
That's what this would be. Right now, we don't have anything, so upon adoption, this would become that. And that's been the issue, is will show us where it says that, and we can't. So this would give us that ability now.
And we attempted to get all of that information in that draft resolution that's in your packet. I don't have it super handy to pull up here, but I certainly can. So if there's something stronger that, based on the conversation today and the direction, we can certainly add it to that resolution. But that was the goal, is to get all of those words in that resolution to get to property owners.
And I personally think this is a step in the right direction. Not saying when we're dead and gone that these new council couldn't come back and open this back up and decide to put 4 lanes in between on these ghost roads. I think this is good. It makes sense to me. And the next step, I'm trying to see what, I don't want to put the buggy in front of the horse. We have some of these properties that are being used, that have structures on them. I guess this is the first thing, get this done and try to get all the quick claim deeds and get it secured, so to speak. And then we need to go and visit those that have structures and stuff, and either give it to those people or sell it to those people, or, no need for us to own it if someone else is using it, so to speak, and we have no intention of.
We don't have any intention
to do anything.
Stuff at this point.
You know what I'm saying? So we could just clean up that whole, because there's some of those. and then we'll have something better to move forward.
Larry, remind me of something that we discussed already, that if we're not going to use these roads for anything other than easements, utility easements, then we would gladly deed it back to that, those, to go back to those residents that's there. But with the understanding, if we deed it back to them and it needs maintenance, who's responsible?
Well, and that sounds like maybe it's a ghost road policy or something that, I think it's maybe a little bit outside of what this resolution is.
That would come later. We'll have to work that out and figure out a plan that's fair and right for everyone.
The direction we have received is, once we have them all in place, then we can consider those individual requests for those circumstances throughout town, and council can vote if they want to abandon them or transfer them or sell them or whatever they may want to do, depending on the unique circumstance for each one.
Okay. The motion? Is there a motion to approve with modifications, deny table the resolution establishing an improvement and maintenance plan for roadways in Old Town?
Well, I think there's modifications that we haven't all agreed on. So, but I think I would like to improve it with those modifications once I know there's a strong consensus from council.
What can I ask what modifications you would like to see?
For an example, it's still a working document. There's still work to be done.
This is first step.
First step to a maintenance.
Right, and
we have no intentions of connecting or building anything on these roads.
Right. And this one's just focused on the maintenance of those roads. We can further look at the ghost road policy and direction, like the town manager
and the giving
mentioned, in
back
a
the property,
separate.
that'd be separate.
Got it, okay.
Second.
Was there a motion made?
Would you amend your motion for simply?
I didn't make a motion yet.
Okay, fine, okay.
I was.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
I move to approve a resolution that establishes an improvement and maintenance plan for roadways in the Old Town.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Nobody? That passes unanimously. Thank you, Heather. Up next is consideration of a resolution approving the purchase of 140 Buck Island Road. Mr. Cease.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is the first time we're discussing this in public, so I'm going to go through a little bit of an introduction just for the public. But we talked earlier during the presentation that Heather made about some of the things that we can do to control the future of the community when it comes to development rights, overdevelopment, smart growth, and all of that. One of the policies that council has and is given direction and is actually funded is for staff to go out and try to find property to acquire that makes sense to reduce the development that could happen within the community, to take those rights off the books, as well as be a benefit to the community that it's located within. So one of the ones that we discussed with council earlier last year, or it's crazy to say, middle of last year, was 140 Buck Island Road. A number went off my mind. It's a little over 15 and a half acres, but it's located right at the corner of Bluffton Parkway and Buck Island Road. So it is not directly, but really close to where we've seen the development that was mentioned earlier, where they put a bunch of property together, and now it's being cleared and developed into about 80 single-family homes. This would keep something similar from happening on this property, while at the same time giving us a piece of property in the Buck Island, Simmonsville community, where we've looked for land in the past to try to look at some sort of community park within that. within that area. So the last proposal that we received on this property came within the last year, and it actually showed 61 townhomes potentially on this site. So again, just a way that we talked about to potentially control growth and limit it as what for the community. We discussed this in executive session back in July, and council gave direction to me to go out and try to work on getting a price and working on bringing acquisition for this property. Since that time, we put together a non-binding letter of intent and agreed to a purchase price of $2.5 million for that property. In November 3rd, we executed a purchase and sale agreement that is contingent upon council approval. So everything that we've done up until this point is specifically limited to whether council wants to approve to purchase the property or not. Should council not want to move forward, we are not bound for any to purchase the property. But if council does move forward, we have the terms in place, and we would look to close probably within the next 2 to 4 weeks on the property. So right now we have a little short of about $5 million in land acquisition funds. So this would use up about half of that. So we would still have future money to go out and look at additional property. Kind of talked about a little bit where it is, but it's 15.51 acres, give or take. It depends on, we're still waiting on the Alta survey to be finalized on right-of-ways, and depending on where you read, it's somewhere around 15.4, 15.5. A little over half of that, 8.63 acres, is upland, and a little less, about 7 acres, is wetland. So when you look at the size of parks that we currently have, you can look at what we've improved at Du Bois and Martin, and those are a little over a couple acres. So there's room for lots of improvements that could be made for this piece of property for the community should we want to. One of the reasons that this is actually good timing for this, should council decide to move forward, is we're in the steps of taking the Buckeye and Simmonsville neighborhood plan and taking the draft from the work committee and bringing it out to the public for public input. As part of doing that, if we have this property under control and we're working towards closing, we can use those public meetings as a chance to get input for the potential reuse of this property from the community, to hear what the residents in that area are wanting to see this as potentially be used for. They could say they want to see it completely left wooded. They could say they want to see a community center, they want a park, they want, who knows? But that way we have them help us guide what the future of the property looks like, besides just making that decision on behalf of the community. So it's a good timing if we decide to move forward, with everything lining up with us being out in front of the community over the next few months. So this gives you, again, an idea of where the property is. Like we said, it's right there in the corner of Bluffton Parkway and Buck Island. This is just the Alta survey, which this is the last step. We're waiting on it to be finalized, to be updated. And again, we talked about what it could be used for. This right here is what the zoning currently allows for it. And last time we had it was for 61 townhomes. So again, that's a potential use that could go on this property. So should council decide to move forward and adopt the acquisition resolution tonight, we would have our 90-day due diligence would expire the 1st of February. We would have to close by March 4th. I anticipate we would be able to close probably by the 1st of February, so we could get the property under control and work on getting, on figuring out what we want to use the property for, or at least take it off the books so it can't be developed in the future. That is my presentation, so I can answer any questions that council may have at this time.
Mr. Wood, you go first.
Yes, sir, thank you. The 61 units, is that something that's transferable to the bank?
This does not have defined rights. This is in our regular zoning, so what you can fit underneath our code on the property is what can be built. So by acquiring this property, we just use that as an example of the last time somebody came in to try to develop the property. It was for 61 units. If they could fit more on the property and still meet our code, it could be potentially more, or it could be potentially less. But because it's in our current, it's not in our development agreement, it doesn't have a defined right associated with it.
Thank you.
Is that 61 unit based on 15 acres or 8 acres?
It's based on the upland acres of what could be built.
And they could actually build 61 units on 8 acres?
Yes, sir. We actually had one came in and tried to build one single apartment building on it. I want to say it was, Kevin, do you remember? It was like 285? Yeah, they wanted to build 285 apartments on it. Now, it didn't meet code, but they came in trying to do that.
Well, I'm 100% in favor of us purchasing this property for a number of reasons, and definitely to stop development, especially on that road, which I think is detrimental to their community, based on what we see is about to happen and has happened. It also gives, the town has shown very good leadership and stewardship as far as trying to maintain the culture of their community. So thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
No questions, just, thank you for taking, the lead in pushing, the consensus of council forward because, just echoing the sentiments of Councilman Hamilton, we see the rapid change that's going on throughout the area, particularly as we see the rise of the effects of things like gentrification. And so being able to go in and help, relieve some of that by acquiring property in these, sacred spaces, I think is going to be instrumental, especially as we're going to have access to things more so like the green tax. I think anytime we can take development rights and other things off of the books and preserve as much land space as we can, I think we're doing the due diligence of what I think the greater community appreciates also. So kudos, let's keep, the more that we can do that, the more access to funds that we have, I think the better.
We're continuing to work on it.
It's a hard job, but I gotta ask it, what did it appraise for?
The appraisal was actually less than what the offer was for, but we had the appraisal done right around the time that the property south of it sold for, I think it was $4.5 million. So, but our appraisal came in right about $2 million. They had it listed for $3 million and we settled right in the middle.
Okay, I think I can support this, so. Anybody else got anything? So.
Should council decide to move forward, I have a proposed motion here. It is very long because it outlines all the details associated with the purchase. So I apologize. I may beat Kevin in the longest resolution that we put up there.
Okay, instead of me reading it, who wants to make a motion? Or does anyone want to make a motion?
I move to approve the resolution of authorizing the purchase and conveyance of the parcel of real property located in Bluffton, South Carolina, consisting of approximately 51 acres of land, of real property identified as map numbers R610-031-00-0003-0000 and the seller's right, title, and interest in 15.51 acres of development rights from F&D LLC to the town of Bluffton, South Carolina, for the purchase price of $2.5 million and authorizing the execution and recordation of certain documents in connection therewith.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's unanimous.
Thank you.
Stephen. Up next, consideration of an ordinance amending the town of Bluffton fiscal year 2024 budget to provide for expenditures of certain funds and to allocate sources of revenue for the said funds. First reading, Ms. Natalie Marguerite, Director of Finance. Hi.
Good evening, Mayor and Town Council. I'm pleased to present the second budget amendment for fiscal year 2024. To begin, we wanted to provide the fiscal year 2023 projected fund balance. We are projecting currently $3.5 million to add to fund balance from fiscal year 2023. Additionally, we're projecting an additional $575,000 so far in fiscal year 2024. With the projected surplus revenue, this budget amendment includes budget adjustments to support economic development with the marketing plan and implementation of the classification and compensation study that's currently underway. There are also some one-time expenses in the budget amendment for capital equipment for public services and additional computer equipment that was proposed to be funded through the Capital Asset Reserve Fund. And the last component is an amendment for holiday decorations that will be funded from a transfer in from hospitality tax fund. In total, this proposed amendment is to increase the general fund by $600,475 to support the class and comp plan, for $80,000, the marketing project for the economic development incentive, and then the IT increase for the computer and laptop docking station replacements. Still with general fund, public services is proposed to increase by $417,175. As noted, the transfer in from hospitality tax for the decorations, and then capital equipment for $242,175. Here shows the proposed budget for the hospitality tax fund, and it's the transfer out to general fund, which brings the hospitality tax fund to just over $8.6 million. And we also wanted to show the mid-year financial update, where we are with hospitality tax when compared to last year at the same time. Currently, we're up just over 11%. Here you see all of our budgeted funds. This amendment will bring the total consolidated budget to $93,201,889. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Anything, Bridget? Fred? Yes, it is my, I have some reservations about making this decision tonight without either a public workshop or even council input on the said expenditures or the allocated funds that is being presented tonight. This is one time when I want to be physically responsible for the funds that we allocate. And I don't think I disagree with everything, but I want to have an opportunity to make other suggestions or have a place where council can have some recommendation as well. This is kind of staff driven, so it is my desire to table this until we can have that opportunity.
Anything from you, Dale?
I concur. I believe, I know in the course of operating the town, there's always exceptions to a rule. Usually something like this would be one exception, but this one has 4. I think it's more appropriate for the budget process, which is what Mr. Hamilton is saying. So I concur. I think it gets tabled.
I'm in agreement with tabling.
Okay. So, there's a motion to table. Take a vote on that, Terry?
Doesn't need a second. The motion is Fred's motion to table?
Okay. And who's second? Dan?
I'll second it.
Any more discussion, or y'all ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. That's unanimous.
Can I ask a
Ma'am.
question?
Thank you.
Real quick? Is there tabled indefinitely?
No, not indefinitely. You can set another date for a workshop or council.
For budget.
Okay.
2 on 2 meetings. 2-on-2 meetings with Chris and staff to answer any questions, get it ready for next month, however you want to do it.
Well,
I would like for all of council to be in that workshop.
Okay, then it would need a formal meeting then.
yeah, well, let me ask this to take it a step further. I don't know why I can't wait for the budget process. It's only a few months out. Normally, these items would be requested during the budget process. So I don't know why we need to come back and do a workshop. This is.
We're going based on that's why I was asking for clarification on the motion that was made.
I agree with Dan.
All right, so just done. Don't bring back.
Budget, during the budget.
But during, the budget would be for fiscal year 24, 25.
Which is a few months away.
So Dan's comment is to discuss as part of the budget that would be adopted in July and not to do any of these changes in this current fiscal year. Your comments are to bring it back next month and do a workshop or whatever. So what was voted on by council, that's what I just want to clarify.
I understand. Then maybe we need to compromise a little bit, because I think this is something I'd like to hear from all the council. 2-on-2 doesn't give me a satisfaction to know that we all on the same page at the same time.
Well, again, I guess we can revisit or rework the motion, but I'm adamant. I feel this is a budget process. You have 4 items, you're talking $600,000-700,000. You used I'm gonna use your words, it was staff driven, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying that even during the budget process, we wouldn't approve these. But I just think, I hate to cast that stone and say this becomes normal under circumstances like this, that we have a budget process that we follow. I have no problem waiting a few months to follow the budget process. That's just me. Y'all may feel differently, and that's the prerogative of doing so.
This is really clear as mud.
So I would just say, based on the motion that was made by Councilman Hamilton that passed, we should bring these back potentially look for a time to bring them back for further discussion, because I understand Councilman Wood may not approve them, but based on the motion that was made, there may still be consideration for some type of amendment, whether it may not be for all of these or part of these or additional funds that may have other priorities from council. So we can bring that back as a workshop item, maybe at the beginning of next month's meeting, and get council's input and then make a determination on how to proceed from there.
I have a question. Go ahead.
Let me go first. I think we're seeing 2 different things here. One, we're seeing the process, because we do budget amendments all the time, and I understand that
Every year.
they're needed.
Mhm.
You know, nobody can figure that out. I think what Dan's goat is the fact that he feels like because we have this extra money, we can go buy some more stuff that we didn't need at the budget, during the budget. Either we didn't need it or we didn't get it approved.
So these items were not requested during
whatever.
the budget.
So we're dealing with 2 things. I don't think anybody would be against spending the money on the items that are listed. I don't think I would personally. It's more the process of just saying, oh, well, we got extra money. We want to buy something. Let's spend it. When budget time is, coming up. I mean, this is the end of January now, so it's not very long, but, that's the issue. Am I right, Dan?
Exactly.
May I make a couple comments?
Sure.
So the purpose of budget amendments throughout the year are for one of two reasons. Either you don't have enough revenues to cover expenses and you have to cut expenses, or you have more revenues than expected and you may be able to use those revenues to address current year priorities, to advance current year priorities. In this case, we are identifying additional revenues, and what the town manager was attempting to propose is addressing some of the funding of priorities that you have included in the budget already. It's advancing the next step of those priorities. So things like the class and comp plan you approved as part of the budget, this would help fund implementing that class and comp plan earlier than the new budget year. Again, that's your choice to do if you want to, but that is what is being proposed for that particular one. She already
The IT equipment, same thing.
So the IT equipment as well, these are things that, renewals and replacements, that are on an annual basis, and this would address those, earlier rather than later. The other thing that I want to point out as well is that, one of the comments that council has brought to us in the past was the growing fund balance, and we addressed that through our fund balance policy. It is still overfunded, and, if we don't use surplus revenues now, which is completely fine, it'll add to that fund balance, that surplus. We'll add to that fund balance, and we start the budget process based on what our expected revenues are, not what we already have in reserves. And typically, you don't want to pull from reserves unless it's for emergency purposes or one-time purposes. So when you start your next budget process, you're not going to rely on those dollars anymore. You're only relying on what you have projected for the upcoming revenue for the upcoming year. So that, depending on what the needs are as part of the budget, it may hinder your ability to address those once those dollars go into your fund balance reserve. Because again, you're only going to pull from that unless it's an emergency or one-time purchases. If you do it for operating purposes, rating agencies look negatively upon that. The economic development marketing plan, that was another one that was a part of this initiative we passed in September, which I'll actually talk about coming up. This was as part of the strategic planning to how we promote and advance that initiative. So these are all things that were carry on from already established priorities of council. Again, I'm not making a case that we vote on it tonight. I just wanted to put context around that as you make that decision. Again, if we don't fund it this year from surpluses, it's going to take away from what's projected from revenue for next year, because those surpluses will just go into our reserve. And again, you're only going to pull from those for emergency purposes and one-time purposes.
There's not a law that says it can't move into the general fund reserve, is there, Chris?
No, absolutely not.
Okay, so that's not exactly accurate.
I never said that. I said
Okay, right.
From a strategic standpoint.
Right.
Once it goes into those reserves, you're not going to withdraw from them without consequences unless it's for emergency or one-time purposes.
Let me say, staff does a great job. I mean, I'm not condemning anything here. And Larry summed it up for me. We operate by budgets, and I know that there's exceptions, and I stated that in the beginning of my feelings. It's not uncommon to have something come up throughout the course of a year. To have 4 different items come up because we found some money and we found a way to spend that money did not go well with me. I didn't like that process. And then it didn't have any support with it in the staff report. There was no support. So that bothered me even worse, because when we go through the budget process, we do get support, and we ask our questions and we're given the answers. So this did not sit well with me. And so again, I can't speak for the rest of council. I'm not changing my opinion. The budget's coming up in a few months. If council decides to go ahead and do a workshop or whatever we may do, so be it, that's fine. I'm just emphasizing my personal opinion.
And 2x2s will begin in March. My recommendation that if it doesn't move forward, we might as well wait for the next budget process.
Say that again, Chris, I'm not sure I got.
So our budget process for next year begins, actually it's underway right now. 2x2 discussions with council member on the next year's budget will be in March. If we delay it a month for workshop and then do 2 additional readings, we're talking about April for the budget amendment approval. At that point, you might as well just wait for including in the next year's budget.
Are there any of these items that we need to, that that we are in serious need for now? You know what I'm saying? I'd never say don't buy a tractor or a computer if we need it, or a telephone. As far as the advertising, fine with skipping out on that.
Nothing here will shut the town down. It'll delay some of the priorities that you had already set as part of our current budget.
One of the things I know is on there is the Christmas decoration, and one benefit of buying it sooner than later is the cost savings.
Yeah. Okay, well, we have 2 choices.
Well, the motion's on the floor.
The motion's actually been voted on 4-0. That's why I was asking for clarification from Councilman Hamilton on what his motion entailed, because it was his motion that passed.
And that motion did not actually read about having the workshop in it, did it?
No, I just said a table.
It just tabled it, and that's why I was asking for clarification.
Mayor has the right to form agendas for next month. So Mayor would be able to say, we're going to put this back on the agenda, because he creates agendas along with our town manager. And if you want to bring it back next month for a workshop and a vote, or workshop, just a workshop, it's up to the mayor to decide what it was on.
Or not put it back and let
Or
it
not
go.
put it back.
Let it go to budget period.
Correct.
Bridget has a comment. Go ahead, Bridget.
Yeah, I want to comment. So it's not unusual, as I said, to make amendments outside of the budget process. So if the consensus is to table it, let's table and go to the next month to be able to workshop and everyone give input and it not be a 2x2.
Well, if we do that, like Chris said, might as well just wait and let it be included in the budget process.
If we want,
Because we have to have 2 readings anyway.
right. I mean, either way, I'm just saying, like, going back to the point of what was made, it's not that it's a foreign thing to request amendments outside of a budget cycle. The issue isn't even that it's an amendment being requested. It's more so the issue of the amount and not having the support that was bothersome. So, I mean, if we want to wait until March, we can, but if the whole intent was to be able to workshop it, to get support, if you can do it in next month, as they all were tied into priorities that were already established, why not do that and alleviate that extra step from things we're already going to be covering in the budget in March?
The original workshop was not the part of the intention. The intention was staff bring it forward and we vote to approve it. That was the intention.
No, what I'm saying is if the process of what they're doing is not uncommon. It's not like this is something that was out of bounds. What's missing is the lack of support to substantiate the funds that are being asked here outside of the purview of being able to give input as some would have liked, or actually see what these designations were for, opposed to just thinking that it's layover funds from somewhere, so let's just spend it while we have it. What I'm saying is if the consensus is to be able to see what that is, to get the support, we can delay it until March, but if they're able to do it next month, that's just my input. Why not just put it as a workshop item for next month's
We have to,
meeting?
Counselor. So the way I understand this, the motion's been made, the motion was voted on, the motion was to table it.
Right.
And the motion, all the other times when people come before us and we vote to table something, it's removed from the agenda.
Move from this agenda, that's correct. It's off this agenda.
It's off this agenda.
Right.
Now, what you're saying is, we've already approved that. It's off this agenda. So that should be the end of this discussion right now, and the mayor can put it back on the agenda for next month.
The mayor can put it back on if.
But that's the end of the discussion tonight. The motion's been made and passed.
No argument for me on that.
Okay.
If not, but if Stephen asks for clarification, we should be able to give that input also if there is not clarity here.
She's right, Dan. I mean.
So, I mean, don't do that. Like, if we're
Well,
asking for
the
clarity.
mayor can put it back on the agenda next month.
But the town manager was asking what, we just said table, he was asking for clarity. If staff prepares something, we should be able to give that intel to them as well, not just as the one and done, we'll get to it when we do.
Counselor just said what I just said. He reiterated the fact that the motion's been made, the motion's been voted upon, it's been removed from the agenda. End of discussion.
And it's.
So, right, I mean, and I know that it's dead for tonight. What we do tomorrow is tomorrow.
Correct, and that's your call to put it back on the agenda or not.
And I'll try to figure that out tomorrow. We got enough fish to fry tonight. Okay, moving on to consideration of an ordinance authorizing an economic development incentive agreement between the town of Bluffton and Solomon Property Holdings LLC in support of the development of 15,000 square feet of health and wellness facility. First reading, Mr. Chris Forrester.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll go over a brief background, what process we have set up for this new incentive plan, what the current proposal is, and grant terms, and my analysis on the project. Just a reminder, back in September 12th, Council passed the Economic Development Incentive Plan. We identified in that plan priority commercial development areas along South Carolina 170, Buckwalter Parkway, and Bluffton Parkway, with a primary focus west of Buckwalter. And with the targeted business purposes of healthcare, dental, home health, pharmaceutical, childcare, affordable housing, mixed-use commercial and flex space, and corporate headquarters. So right now, our process right now is typically they'll reach out to me or someone at town. They are required to submit a letter of intent, as well as fill out a South Carolina Department of Commerce Economic Impact Worksheet. I will interview the business owner or developer on their project and get any clarifications. I will review their application and develop a recommendation, and then we'll bring it before you all for council consideration. So what we had come in as our first application was for a one-story dental office building, which is connected to a two-story tenant building. Total square footage of the buildings are 15,000 square feet of Class A medical office space, and they have 5,000 that will be for a dental office. The remaining 10,000 as part of requesting for a grant, they're willing to commit to lease it for health and wellness related purposes. And these are some of the businesses that they're currently in talks with. One of them is a primary care medical office, ophthalmology, rheumatology, medical spa, and oral surgery. These are all in talks currently right now. The estimated for the total development is of 128 full-time positions within 5 years of opening, and an average salary of $105,000. The total developer investment of this project is $10.8 million. This is a quick look at what we're talking about. This is in the New Riverside Village development. As you can see over there to the left is your dental space. It's connected in the back to that two-story building with a little garden and courtyard area in between there. You may recall that as part of the ordinance, there are a few things that you can provide incentives for. Permit and development fees up to 50%, Beaufort Jasper water sewer capacity fees up to 100, and business license fees up to 50% for up to 5 years. There's also a catch-all in there that if there are developments or proposals significant enough that council finds important based on what we're trying to achieve, they can offer other incentives as determined by you all. And part of developing some guidance on looking at these projects, we developed a eligibility matrix that kind of gives some guidance to anyone who reaches out asking, what could I potentially be eligible for? And we kind of tiered it here as obviously the larger the development dedicated to one of those industries or professions would get the full or proposed to get the full percentage credits as part of a grant. So again, this is 15,000 square feet of Class A health and wellness office space. The goal is to establish a dental operation by April 1st of 2025 and commit the remaining 10,000 square feet to those health and wellness related tenants. The grant would be paid annually on April 1st, and the proposed grant equivalent would be 50% of permit fees, 100% of Beaufort Jasper capacity fees, and again, the 50% of business license fees for the first 5 years. This is a quick look at what we're talking about dollars and cents wise. On the left are all the different fees that these developers are on the hook for. These are estimates currently until they actually get calculated and paid. We won't know the exact amount. Some of these are exact, but they're in various stages. One thing I do want to point out here, the developer asked council to consider including the impact fees that are paid to the county as part of this proposal. So you'll see that in that list as well. So the total fees that they are paying to us, the county, and for impact fees and the Beauty for Jasper fees are $142,000. Based on this and the proposed percentages, the year one benefit would be $91,000, and then the ongoing business license fees in the out years. And keep in mind, those business license fees are just related to the development properties and the dental office. It doesn't include any business license fees related to businesses that may locate in that 10,000 square foot. So what is this, how does this impact the town's coffers? Basically, net, we're pretty much proposing to grant back essentially what they pay to the government for these different fees. Net revenue over the 5 years is about $3,000 based on this current proposal. Any questions?
Bridget?
No, the questions I had, you have outlined here. Thank you.
Federal?
The questions that I had, he already had outlined here.
I'm kind of lost here. This is based on a dental facility, right?
So it's a dental facility is a part of it. So the developer is also going to own and operate the dental facility, and then he is going to lease out the remaining 10,000 square feet.
I know we want to do medical and technology as part of our economic development, but this seems like such a small operation for what we're going to compensate. So I was kind of hoping that we could find something that could offer more jobs, a dental facility. I just left my dentist this morning. It's run by 3 people. You know, so, how are we going to get our investment back or tax money back from something that small?
Yeah. So I will just say that this program is not a one and done program. So it's in our ordinance, and the goal here, just like a snowball going down a hill, is to build some momentum, show that we're serious about what we adopted. We'll get something in place, get a developer to commit to health and wellness related businesses, and obviously that'll grab some attention. I have been contacted by other individuals, some smaller, some larger than what's been proposed, anywhere from just 10,000 square feet alone versus up to someone that's looking to do 50,000 square feet. So the word is out, it's getting out there. I think that using the ordinance as it was intended would help build some momentum. And this individual is willing to commit those remaining 10,000 for health facilities as well.
And to your point, Councilman Hamilton, I think it was 2 parts in there. One, I saw there was a projection of 67 added jobs, but in something here, I just saw, I think 120.
Yeah, so the 67 is year one, the projected year one, and then 128 is over the 5 years as businesses come in and they grow their practices.
Dan? I'm sorry, you done? I'm done.
I love the program. I mean, again, and we all know that we knew we were going to need at least a year to do a look back, to tweak it and improve it, to see if it's working as intended. You know, one of the questions I had the other night was, you know, what percentage are we actually, based on the investment? It was 1%, and it's not a lot of money. And so if you're building a $10,500,000 operation, and you're going to get, at the end of 5 years, $96,000. I don't know that somebody's going to move and relocate a business, but I think it's a start. And again, I applaud staff for being innovative to come up with a program to help us try to achieve the things we want. The only other questions, that was a comment, the only other questions was, and I don't think it matters in this formula, but the 65 jobs, I couldn't fathom a 5,000 square foot building with 65,000 jobs.
So that would include...
Excuse me, 65.
So that would include offices occupying all 15,000 square feet.
Well, that said it went up to 128 jobs at that point, didn't it?
That's the growth of practice over time.
I got you.
Some of these will probably start with maybe one dentist or one doctor.
I
And
got
then
you.
as the clientele come in, the goal is that they recruit more individuals. and
And
staff.
then the only other thing was, I don't understand the impact fees. I know this was a concern that the mayor had mentioned to me, and I don't understand.
So that was a discussion with the developer, I kind of went over what he would be eligible for based on the top, those top three items, town permanent development fees, Beaufort Jasper, and business license fees. And he brought up, the impact fees are quite substantial, and I explained to him that, well, those are actually paid to the county, clarified that for him. And I said, within the ordinance, it does give the council opportunity to consider other items to include in the grant. And I said that I could propose it, but there's no guarantee that they would support it. So it is included as a proposal. Again, the total, that 142, 150, is again, only 1% of the total investment that he's making.
So the 47,245 for the impact fees, and again, I'm just asking questions. I'm not opposed unless somebody has a better argument. But that money to pay the impact fees comes out of the general fund.
It would come out of what he pays in these other fees. But yes, general fund, because it all goes in the general fund. But yes.
Right, and then if you had somebody, you mentioned a minute ago, Chris, a 50,000 square foot potential building, I think you said.
Right.
So if that individual walks through the door, his impact fees are gonna be 5 times this number?
Could be, I don't know.
Could be. And are we saying that we would make this part of the package, that we would offer this to anyone who asked on the impact fees?
Again, that's your discretion on a case-by-case basis. Now, I think what you're relaying is the concern of whether or not you're setting a precedent that you'd be obligated to uphold. I think that's what your concern is.
Or, yes, I am.
That's, Chris, I put it back on that screen. Yeah, there we go. I'm fine here. And, when we say over 5 years, we're only given a $96,000 5-year benefit, that's because we're not giving anything after the first year, basically, other than $1,400, you know what I mean, which is beans. I know that's the only thing, maybe we could figure some ways to increase those second and third years, with something. I would much rather spread out our grant over 2 or 3 years, or even more to help them get going than to obligate to the impact fees. You know what I mean? It's not the amount of money on this project, but it does kind of set a precedence. And when you get that big company coming in here and say, well, you did it for them, how come you can't do it for us? And that number could go from 23,000 to 230,000 real quick.
Right.
And I wouldn't personally want to I wouldn't want to set that precedent on the impact fees. I'm more than willing to be open-minded on any other thing that you can come up with to help them more than just the first year.
You've already maxed out everything else though, haven't you?
I have, yeah.
Well, without it.
Even their property taxes.
So we could always use that as part of the analysis, what their annual property tax for the town would be.
We do that for big corporations
But
and
again,
all that, so.
Again, is it a precedent that you'd like to set? Again, I can do that analysis.
I mean, with a sunset, I would be okay with doing something because you're not getting any taxes from them now.
Right.
So if you help them build something, then you create the tax.
Right, long term, yep.
And if you don't, if it takes a couple of years to get it back, then that's business, but, that's just mine.
Could council informally adopt a policy where they said, we're, just for your knowledge, that you can tell developers, we're gonna cap impact fee abatements at like $25,000 or $30,000. so it's under it at this point in time. But then from a precedent perspective, you can say, listen, this is what council has pretty much told me, they're not gonna go beyond. Would that give you some additional, ammunition for people down the road?
Yeah.
Perhaps? I don't know, did you
Well,
all
let's-
understand what I was talking about?
Yeah, I hear you. I hadn't thought of it that way.
I don't think you need to put it in the ordinance, but they can certainly express that to you.
That may be, I still just hate writing a check, giving a check away to something that we don't ever see. We don't, you know, the impact fees go to the county, and we're gonna write our check to them for the money that they gave the county. I don't know.
Right.
And I'm not advocating one way or the other. I'm just pointing out that if you look at the one below that, you have the BJWSA capacity fees. And those are credits that we've gotten from doing sewer projects that we will allow the credits to be used for economic development. Again, those are fees that we don't collect, that we're allowing the revenue that we've put on those projects to then be recognized, the benefits that we've received, again, for them. So not necessarily apples to apples, but still similar, and that it's a fee that is going to a different entity that we're helping to offset. And we've done that before with BJWSA on economic development. Again, I'm not advocating one way or the other, just pointing out that we do offset some other fees for different entities.
But Beaver Jasper gives us,
They give us those credits because we spent money to put pipes in the ground on their behalf. We spent money to build those up.
Let me, like I said, I was lost and I wanted to understand it. And again, I'm not nay. And I can see the numbers going up unless we capped them at some way. But then again, the way this plan works, the original blush that you and I went through with some people, the smaller projects based on investment will coop a larger percentage. The greater projects, in other words, if you went from $10 million project to a $30 million or $40 million project, the percentage of that is going to be a whole lot less. The money would be more because the project is more, but the percentage of the benefit to the customer is less. So I don't know if having impact fees that we pay is a bad thing or a good thing. Obviously, you put it in here. Well, if we took them out, he wouldn't even hit the 1%, right? It would be less than that. Is there any other mechanism to use that you would offer, or you think this is the best tool to go by?
Again, I think I viewed this program from a standpoint of how do we provide an incentive without dipping into other revenue sources. So I always wanted to look at it from what are the potential revenues they were going to generate and what can we offset through a grant. So outside of these, you're talking about property taxes. So using that as a gauge. And again, you could do it like business licenses where you set it over just a 5-year and let it sunset, and then you gain the benefit moving on. Or so yeah, and you got to remember also with these economic development projects, you're going to be generating economic activity that also generates tax revenue too. So there is that benefit that's not calculated here.
So is your recommendation to leave that as is? I mean, because again, I don't know of any other alternative except you mentioned property tax. I don't know.
Right, because we're incentivizing here, so what additional incentive could be given outside of what's already been scaled here?
business license, Chris, these small numbers.
Yeah.
Why are they so small?
It's just based off of the dental office.
Off the wall, but this is not on the entire 15,000 square feet of
No.
other businesses.
That's correct. Those individual businesses, since this application is both the developer and operator of the dental office, that's combined here. But other businesses that locate there, they would have to apply separately for those incentives.
But they could apply.
They could, yes. So their costs and permit fees are related to upfit, as well as their ongoing business license fees, the tenants.
Right, so technically, we would be doing 2 grants or maybe 8 grants for the exact same 1,500 square feet.
Potentially.
Not for capacity fees, though.
No,
No, no,
he's already
but
paid
the
it.
other stuff.
Right.
So,
Because they're,
you know
they
what I'm
would be
saying? It's
considered
not,
separate businesses.
this isn't the end of the.
No.
Right.
Because the easier, if we're there to help the tenants move into those empty spaces, we're helping the owner, the guy that built them too. Because the sooner he gets them outfitted and people in them, his revenue starts coming in, so he doesn't need as much help.
As long as they fit what we're trying to rate and build out there, so.
And that's the objective, so.
Yeah, I mean, I like that. That's the way it's supposed to work, right?
Go back to Councilman Frazier's question, what else may be there?
For me, that was more so of a hypothetical in the sense of like, I think how it's laid out, because we had this presented before, is fine. I was more so presenting that to those who were questioning it, like what else could be done, you know,
I'm sorry, but-
outside of saying like, we'll pay for you to build a project. I think like what's being offered here, knowing that this isn't like a nonprofit entity that's not gonna go back and recoup that revenue once they're in operation. This is a win-win for them too, in the sense of we're taking something off of their plate to do, but they're here to make money as well. And so we don't need to overextend what we're incentivizing here because we're not profiting in a long term outside of, you know, business license fees, but they're the ones who are gonna be the general profiters of their development.
Go back to that statement and some of the others, and not to keep dragging on the conversation, but if the impact fees are something that is still questionable for council, the property taxes is something that I think that's more something that could be added in and is not necessarily a bad precedent if that's what you're worried about setting, unless you look at what Terry commented about capping, if that's still a worry. The one thing about doing property taxes over the impact fees is it would allow all the fees that are in here really to be ones that are set by council. Business license, permits, property taxes, those are things that we control what those levels are set. So if you stick with that, that would work. But if you're comfortable with what Chris has outlined and going forward with that, that's something we can keep in mind and in the back pocket as we move forward as other options for other economic development incentives.
Well, let me be clear, since I've asked all these questions, because I'm trying to understand it. I'm not anti-impact fee reimbursement. I wasn't saying that. I was just trying to understand where it came from, how we were going to pay for it, where did it end, all of these things. So, I don't know. I'm open-minded to go with it.
My recommendation would be probably to pull impact fees to keep it cleaner, because we don't want to get into a situation where we're constantly reimbursing for revenue that doesn't come to our coffers. If you all pass first reading with the stipulation that we include an analysis on factoring in property taxes for the out years, for the 5 years, I can come back at second reading with the updated figures.
I personally am fine with it the way it is.
I didn't hear you.
I said personally, I'm fine with it the way it is because the setup of it is 50%, if I'm reading it correct, up to 50%. So it does not earmark like we're going to pay 100% or we're going to pay whatever dollar amount. It says up to, and so it seems like there's already a discretionary clause there because of that wording. But the needs of a person coming with a $1 million project as opposed to one who's coming with a $5 million project, it's still doing the same thing as it's giving them an incentive up to a certain amount. So budget to budget wise, it's doing the benefit of that percentage itself. So I don't think we need to like become like a stickler more so to get ourselves locked into an exact amount. I think having that discretionary ability, gives way more room to make it on a case-by-case basis, is the way that I perceived it. I could be wrong.
Yeah, and I agree with most of that. The only thing that is a little spooky to me personally is somebody comes in, they want to do a $20 million project, and their impact fees are $800,000. Are we going to write them a $400,000 check?
But it says up to, so you could say, well, if it's that amount,
That's what he said, up
then maybe
to.
we'll do,
Cap, but
maybe we'll do 10%. You do, I just see like doing a cap or going too specific gets us locked into something that we wouldn't be able to like, back away from. Whereas if you leave it, not necessarily as ambiguous as it is, but really if you leave it that way, whoever's making that decision, whether it's council or whomever, can say, well, this particular project will do if it's up to 50, we'll do 10%, or we'll do 20%, because the needs of the project may not be as beneficial to the community to warrant getting the full 50%. So I think looking at it on a case-by-case basis is gonna be better.
What you're saying is just retain the discretionary aspect of the current ordinance and look at things on a case-by-case basis and recognize that, is what, I believe what I'm hearing.
personally, and however we vote, I'm fine with it either way, but I personally would rather not see the impact fees as part of our package,
But then he needs
I'm wide
to
open to come up with some other ideas.
replace it, okay, I was gonna
You know what I'm
say.
saying, if we could, move forward with everything else the way you've got it, and just say right now, and I can tell you're not extremely overly enthused about putting ourselves and our town in that. If I'm reading you correctly.
Well, yeah. So again, I was really looking at this from what are the revenues that these projects are generating and what can the grant be based on? Again, I don't want to be put in a position where we would be pulling from other revenue sources
Right.
and putting.
Exactly. And
So-
Don't need
I
to do
could
that.
see us putting ourselves there, Okay. So,
Well, let me ask the final question. So we make the motion to approve first reading, and then staff will come back with an alternative plan? Is that what I'm hearing? For the one item, the impact fee item.
or should we just exclude that? Make a
He needs
motion
to
to approve it first reading with, how should we do that, Terry?
You could make a motion to approve what Chris has presented, absent the impact fee, on first reading, with the understanding that Chris, at second reading, may have some other mechanism or some other means to replace that $23,000, which would not be a material change between first and second reading, and you could then go forward.
You feel comfortable with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Or would it be simpler if we just approve it on first reading and instruct you to alter it? It's just gotta come back again. If you don't fix it, we won't approve it.
I think it would be more beneficial to approve it with it removed, so at least he can relay that to the developer that it's removed.
All right. Who wants to generate that?
That the motion should read.
Wait a minute.
The motion should be, make a motion to approve first reading of an ordinance authorizing the town manager to enter into an economic development grant agreement between the town of Bluffton and Solomon Property Holdings, Inc., utilizing the financial data presented by staff, with the removal of the 23,000 plus change in economic impact fee abatement, with the understanding that at second reading, $22,000 may be captured through some other mechanism.
Could you make it any,
Remembering that.
let me take a stab unless Fred wants to take a stab. You did good a while ago. You did great.
is Lisa with the meter?
I'm going to make the motion to approve the first reading of this ordinance authorizing the town manager enter into an economic development grant agreement between the town of Bluffton and Solomon Property Holdings LLC with the removal of the impact fee as listed on whatever exhibit that is. You have an exhibit number by chance?
I don't know. I mean,
Just say within the presentation.
Within the presentation, with the understanding that staff will come back with an alternative source to replace it by the next meeting.
Thank you. Bridget? Here to
All that,
vote.
Marcia.
All in favor?
Nay?
Huh?
Nay?
Nay.
3 ayes and 1 nay.
You get that? Okay. They got me all tangled up there. Okay, moving on to consent agenda items. Does anybody want to pull anything off of consent agenda? Nope. Do I have to read all this?
You're just asking for the consent agenda to be approved.
Yeah. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Executive session. Is there a motion to move into executive session? Oh, yeah. For discussion relating to the proposed contractual agreements between Beaufort County School District and the town of Bluffton pursuant to South Carolina Freedom of Information Act 30-4-70A2.
Make that motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. We are in executive session.
Mayor, can we?
no votes taken in executive session, but we do have a motion. Whoever wants to read that.
I move to authorize the town manager in coordination with the legal counsel to execute a memorandum of understanding with the Beaufort County School District to partner in the potential purchase of property, exchange of property, and purchase of development rights.
I'll second.
Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
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 Let me have that, I'll hand that to
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.